I have a housekeeping question first before we start our meeting. I would imagine, here's Tori. We're missing just Allison? Okay. As you guys know, just in terms of housekeeping, you know we meet on the 24th?
Monday?
Yes.
Yeah, he's gonna just give a second for Tori. Let me just hold on until Tori's back.
We're sitting there with the changes.
Yeah, that's fine, thank you.
Oh, if Allison's not gonna come, maybe,
We'll put her over there on the,
you wanna sit on the end again?
oh, yeah, that's his. Yeah, but no, put Tori there, and then Allison over here, but I don't know where she is, so in the meantime,
I don't think she's.
Nancy, why don't you sit over there?
Yeah, I don't think Allison.
Or wherever you're with a microphone, you don't think she's coming?
I don't think so, she's coming Monday, I was told.
Oh, what's today?
I do have a
Thursday?
request for you all, but we are live now, just so you know.
Yep.
Please pull your mic toward you because the people at home are saying they can't
Hear us.
hear you.
Yep.
So, and don't push it away when you're not using it because then you forget to pull it back towards you. So please pull the phone towards you.
All right, Nancy.
Okay, before we start tonight's meeting, we do have a meeting Monday night. And in the interest of transparency, we would like to be live streaming that. We're scheduled currently in Hinsdale, and that does not allow its technology there easily. So the proposal is to actually meet here Monday at 5, which allows us this room, this technology, until 6:45. The danger of that is, if the meeting goes over, we have to migrate. And we would probably migrate to the probate room, which in that case, we'd lose the technology and the families at home could not see us. The alternative would be, option B, just to go to Hinsdale at the regular 6 o'clock, excuse me, and then we would just have to try to figure out how to live stream from Hinsdale at 6 on Monday. So I just wanted to get a survey. If that's an option, option A, 5 o'clock here, are we available 5?
I'm available for 5 on Monday.
I could be available for 5.
I can make it.
Yeah, I can. Oh, no.
Okay, all right, so this is an option. We'll let you know, but at least I have an idea of what the options are,
And
okay?
in truth, because it's Monday and we have a minimum of 24 hours posting and town hall closes at noon on Fridays, we probably should decide that when we leave here tonight.
Right.
Well, let's just make the decision now.
Unless maybe you want to wait and see where you
No.
feel like you are at the end of the meeting and,
And no, let's just make the decision now, because we're on it. And
Yeah.
that's good, because now we have a time frame for the meeting. We can't go over an hour and 45 minutes,
Right.
right?
or we would have to relocate
Or we
to
have to read, okay, but let's
another
try to
room
make
in
it
the building.
into an
And
hour
that you
45.
just have to be open to, but is the migration, if it goes over? Okay, so we're
Monday
okay
at
with
5?
5 o'clock?
Yep.
Yes.
So then we'd have to repost for 5,
Okay.
because right now it's currently 6.
Someone do me a huge favor and email Darlene. Actually, email me, because I think I'm the one with the document that's editable.
Okay, thank you. Okay, everyone, I'm calling to order the Special Board of Education meeting for the Winchester Board of Ed on February 20th at 6:06 PM. Can I have a pledge of allegiance, please? Thank you, everyone. Can I have a roll call, please? Tori?
Tori Lavetri.
Renee Waldron.
Jeanette Broder. Sandra Strubar.
Nora McCarsky?
Julie Luby.
Kurt Werner.
Shane Centrella.
Jonathan Morehart.
Just to note, for the record, Allison Pierce is excused. Okay. Item 2, approval of the agenda. Is there anything to add or change on the agenda?
I'd like to add an item to the agenda. What I'd like to add to the agenda is, there's a motion that we had last time. I'd like to have amended motion for that. So the motion would be titled, Motion for Collaborative Budget Development. That's on the agenda, so I'd like to have that put on.
So you want to add it under,
Amendment, yes.
under
amendment.
item 4, action items,
Yep,
as item B?
yep.
And Julie, who's taking minutes?
I'll have I wrote it out too, so we can give the motion.
Okay, hold on.
I guess I'm taking minutes, I don't know. Okay, so you need a motion and a second to put that on?
Yep.
Okay, so
Shane, can you say it again? So item
Yes.
B under action item 4.
So a motion for collaborative budget development.
Imagine you want discussion and possible motion?
We could have some discussion, but definite motion, yes.
Discussion and possible motion for collaborative budget development between,
Yeah, it's just that's
Okay.
enough.
Agenda.
all right.
So Shane, second Jonathan.
All in favor of item B to the budget, or to the agenda? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, 8-0, thank you. Any other changes to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll go in.
Somebody has a notepad and pen, I'll take notes. I don't have a notepad, I probably have a pen. She's got one. Great. She's got a notepad. All right, thank you.
I'm taking some notes too, so we can.
Tora,
cross
set the
reference.
agenda. Can you move it down so I can get off my phone?
Not passed.
Thanks. Agenda? Nancy, you have the grant and
Yes, what would you like?
those two big pieces of paper, please.
The ones that were back to back, the grants and the other. You got it.
Okay, item 3, communications. Item A, community input received by the Board of Education members. Has anybody received any community input? Okay, seeing none. Item 4,
Official community input or
What are we talking about?
about the budget?
yeah, related to the special meeting tonight.
Oh, I've received plenty of input. Nobody is happy with the number, but I don't think anyone's read it enough to see what we're dealing with at the same time, so. But it's a shock, definitely a shock to a lot of people in the town, when we're talking about the mill rate. And, for anyone watching, it doesn't, fall on deaf ears. It's a lot. Everyone knows it's going to be a very hard task for people to pay that this year for such an increase. So, yes, we have concerned citizens for sure.
Anyone else? Okay. Item number 4, action items. I would just like to state that I'd like to thank persons putting this budget together. I know it is going to be a little bit of a difficult uphaul, but I'd like to thank Julie for having your patience, because there's a massive learning curve, visiting with many different stakeholders in the community, getting to know who is who, and the learning curve has probably been fierce. So I'd like to thank you for your time and your energy in all of this, and presenting to us the documents and the information that were needed, and the questions that have been answered so far. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, review questions and answers and deliberation on the superintendent's proposed fiscal year 2026 budget.
What I'd like to propose, if we could, is, first, I just brought hard copy because I'm not sure how often people are in their emails of the information we sent last night. Going that way. These, I didn't reprint the entire Q&A document because it didn't change, other than to basically say "see attached" with a very brief narrative about this. But these are in response to 2 questions that were sent in. One asked for a list of all of our existing contracts with the information that's provided on that, and the other asked to have a bigger understanding of our grant utilization. We are lucky, very lucky, that we do receive these grants. They're a mix of federal and state, for the most part, and roughly half of the grant money goes directly against the salary line in our budget. And And some of it, I just want to draw your attention to because it took me a minute when I looked at it to really understand what I was looking at. But for example, the 313,420 under SR, which stands for school readiness, isn't money that we utilize. It's money, it's passed through us by the state. The state sponsors childcare seats. So while our grant allocations add up to $2.2 million, I just wanted to point out that not all of that money is money available for our use. So that was like a big chunk that struck me as I, again, tortured poor Nancy with a million questions.
Are you okay with where SR is, everyone? It's the fourth column over on the top. Okay, it's 327 at the bottom.
And I apologize, I should have started with a more global look, right? I'm just trying to be so mindful and get you to the things I know you want to talk about. Across the top are full names or partial names or secret code names for different grants that we are very fortunate to receive. You'll see to the far right, Seek G, as our new Director of Pupil Services has renamed to help us keep them apart. And that is the excess cost grant. And that money that we receive is already reflected in the appropriated budget request because it is taken, the full costs for out-of-district placements and other special education costs are dropped down by that amount. So the budget already reflects that as,
Having received that grant money
exactly.
for special ed costs.
And these, of course, are all grants, they all come in the fall, or they, you know, the allocations come in the fall, so every year, I believe probably in every district across the state, you use your current year's allocations as your assumptions for the following year and pray that they don't go down, because they can. But that's the only information you have at this time of year. So if there's any on here that you want to ask particular questions about, or if you want to absorb this and revisit it in a bit, but this was, again, responsive to a question that came in our question box.
Julie, can you just go over the headings so everybody's clear? Family
Yes.
Resource Center, SR Quality, what
Yep.
the various grants are.
So across the top, Family Resource Center, which is all about early childhood. We have our Family Resource Center, which has like drop-in programs for little ones and community outreach. School readiness is also pre-K. Nancy, I'm sort of looking to you, keep nodding, and as long as I get it right. Quality grant, I have no idea what that is.
Oh, quality is to improve the quality for school readiness.
Oh.
It's just a little bit of extra money that they give to the school readiness program.
Are these all state grants, or are they
No.
federal?
No, it's a combination.
Okay, so we get both state and federal, and they're just as
They're all-
one number
they're all here
in the grant?
for you to see.
Okay.
In Nancy's grant reports, she often has them split, and in fact, in the budget book, they're separated out by state and federal.
Yes,
Um,
saw that.
Here, they're just intertwined a bit.
Yep.
CHAMPS is a grant we received that pays in part for the after-school sort of child care enrichment program that families pay tuition for their kids to participate in. The funds raised from the tuition defray the costs of it, so between the grant, which pays for the director and some of the staffing, between the grant and the tuition money, it's self-funded, if you will. So that's not money that the district uses per se, but CHAMPS is sort of like a standalone program of its own.
I'm under the understanding that that is on shaky ground for next year. We have to reapply, but it's not part of the governor's.
Yes, it has happened a few times.
Yeah.
And every time it comes back.
Okay.
So we're being optimistic that it will continue.
Right, but if that goes away, the extracurricular,
That was actually gonna be,
Yeah.
Then the
one of my
program would
questions
go
was, is
away.
there
Yeah.
any possibility that any of these grants could not happen?
Of course. So
It's in it for this year, we know that, but
Yes.
moving forward.
Yeah.
I would say when you're relying on grants, there's always the possibility, because again, we're living in the year of the grant now, and we don't get our allocations for the following year. There's lots of talk about federal funding and how that might change.
will be delayed.
And in the absence of real information, I think our best plan is to carry forward as we do and hope and sort of having our, like, if there was ever a year to not get cute and, you know, make bold assumptions about grants, this probably feels like a risky year.
Yeah.
If we, you know, strip everything out of the budget completely and then we don't get a federal grant, then we're out of business. I mean, like, so there's no guarantees on any of it. In the past, the title grants always felt pretty assured. They bob a little bit higher or lower, but because there is so much sort of re-looking at everything being done on the federal level, my confidence level isn't the usual, like, 97% likelihood you're getting what you got in the past. The Alliance is, I'll say, as sure as a grant can be. It's $200,000 every year. And that is from our days of being in receivership and a commissioner's network district. We were an Alliance district. We are still in name, even though we have sort of graduated because of our progress. But recognizing that it would be disincentivizing to say to towns, once you bring up your scores a little bit, the money walks away. Lots of money walked away, but they hold you harmless, if you will, with that $200,000. So I've been given assurances that should not go away. The ARP Mental Health Grant is the last lingering COVID money. Some of what we're experiencing in this year's budget cycle is a ugly grant cliff, and you're probably hearing about it in other communities as well. COVID generated an awful lot of funding. There was ESSER money, ARP ESSER money, they just kept coming for a minute, and that was great, but it masked a lot of need. The ARP Mental Health Grant has $49,000, or will have at the end of this year, which is defraying the BCBA that we're adding. That's why that's not budgeted at a full salary. But that is the only thing left on here that's like not one of our, that is COVID related. And there's zero indication that that would be renewed or coming back. Seek G, again, you're always gambling on what percent reimbursement you'll get, but I think as a practice across districts, you budget at the percent you're getting this year. And pray to
It's around
goodness it doesn't
70%,
go down.
Yeah.
So that's the assumption behind that one. Adult ed, we don't actually, again, that's another one, the money comes and it goes right back out. It's purposed for, because we don't have our own, like, adult ed programs that we offer, we have to support them at Ed Advance. Am I saying that close?
Yeah, you're right.
So that's also not money that we use. The Medicaid is not a grant per se, that's reimbursement, right?
But technically, it's considered a grant in
Is it?
some ways, yeah. I mean, it is funding that comes through from the feds to the state, yeah.
But it's based on our use of services, our kids' services that they get that can be billed back to Medicaid. And you'll see in one of our line item discussions tonight, CompuClaim or Relay, I forget, those are both their names. So whichever one of those will show up, you'll see we have to pay about $5,000 to process all that to get the money back. But that is a little bit of income for us. The other thing I'll point out is that in the total allotment of 2.253037, she did that without glasses, by the way.
At the very bottom there.
26,000 is for use by Gilbert School. We administer it, but a couple of the grants require you to set aside money for private schools in your town. And so in that conversation, Gilbert is a private school and is entitled to that. So within the entire grant allocation, the money that's sort of in play, if you will, that we use, 20,000 from Title I supports our supply needs in the district, and the 19,000 in Title II that you see marked professional technical services is our entire professional development budget. We are contractually obligated for up to, I believe, $200 per certified teacher to provide professional conferences if they want to attend. Just thinking quickly, the number of teachers, that just about matches that. So we need to have that available, and we, unlike any district I've seen before, actually do not have any money in our operating budget or our appropriated budget for professional development. That is the entire ball of wax. So that 20 for supplies and that 19 for professional development are the only, like, things we spend out of that aren't pre-planned, if you will. They are pre-planned because we know they're going for professional development and supplies, but they are not, like, articulated out in the appropriated budget. And, of course, the Gilbert's 26,000. So of the 2.2 million, it goes to great use.
The definitions of each of these are in the back of your budget book, if you want further information.
And they are all very much, they have lots of rules around what you can use it for. Nancy's practice of, as staff has been added over the years, the purpose of grant money is always very clear that it must supplement, not supplant, is the expression. Supplement meaning give you an opportunity to do something you don't already do versus just start paying for something you've always done. And so over the years, as things have been added, an EL teacher, a reading consultant, things like that, Nancy has distributed the title funds across those positions so that you're still able to see all the people who work here in our salary line. There are no people who are invisible because they're solely paid in a grant. The other place where we left off that I thought we should revisit and then just plow forward with line item review was we were having a discussion of the health benefit line and the really unfortunate increase there, which is about $400,000. As we shared with you, we are part of a consortium which works very much to our benefit. We partner with, of course, the town of Winchester and Gilbert. We partner with the Heartland Board of Ed, Thomaston, the town and the Board of Ed. Heartland was both, Region 7, New Hartford, Norfolk, Barkhamsted, Colebrook, and as Kurt aptly pointed out, the increase applies to everyone in that group, and it is based on the experience rate of the group as a whole. We are the black sheep of that family. Our experience rate is awful, and we are probably an anchor dragging that down. And I know this because we met with our agents, and I said, well, what if we just left the group? Because I'm so State Street, I would have been willing to walk if it benefited us. And they laughed at me and explained that we have a horrible experience rate, that they showed us, like, for every dollar that we pay Anthem, they've paid out like $1.25 in claims. Like, they're not making money on us at this point. He said, don't feel sorry for them. They're a big company and it all works itself out. But
They make money on everyone else.
But we are not a hot commodity that we could, like, take ourselves out there. We asked about the state plan. I think it was gonna be like 4 times worse of an increase. A lot of groups wouldn't even bid on us. So please know that we have tried, those poor Brown and Brown people, again, I kept them on the phone on a Zoom for hours. Well, what if, and could we, and how do we, and so the other thing that plays into that, that's roughly like half of the increase, is due to that 11.9% increase. The other part is that this time last year, we had 85 of our employees taking our insurance. This year, at the same time, we have 96 of our employees taking our insurance. So 11 more people participating, along with whether they have a single, a two, or a family, is another, like, the other half of that increase. I want to point out, there is a lot, you see the one number in the box for health insurance. So again, I've tortured Nancy a bit, and what you're seeing in that box is, has a lot of calculations behind it, because that is not the number we're paying Anthem, the number we're paying Anthem is actually much more than that. That number is reduced by each person's contribution, depending on people's bargaining unit. If you're a paraprofessional or a teacher, you might be contributing 17, 18, 20% of your premium. So that number is reduced by those premiums. Like she has calculated, it isn't just like, let's make up a number that'll cover it. It's, here's how many people take the benefits, how many are singles, how many are families, what is their level of contribution. We also, part of our plan, and I think this is pretty standard, is we fund half of the copay because they're high deductible plans. So all of that is in the mix. But it is a calculated number, not an estimate, and I thought that's important for you to know as well. The one crazy idea, I'm gonna say it out loud, that I was trying to think about, knowing that this is a huge line in our budget, and so I did ask Brown and Brown. This is legal, ethical, albeit unusual, and there may be one fly in the ointment, but one of the things I was gonna try to bring you a proposal was to say one way we could save money, if it costs, say, $30,000 to insure a family, and then they contribute 20%, you're at like 24, but then we fund the HSA, you're at 26. Currently, the teacher's contract has a small, like 1,000 if you're single, 1,500 or 2,000 incentive if you don't hop on our benefits. So instead of early retirement, which we don't really have enough people who'd be eligible for, like that's often a place you go when you're desperately trying to save money, but I don't think we'd get anything out of that. Considering meeting with the bargaining units and launching an incentive that says, if you have a spouse or a parent who can cover you, we'll give you $5,000 to hop off our plan and hop on a different plan. It's legal. It only works if they have other coverage. But each person that hopped off, there would be savings. The catch is, and I don't have an answer for this yet, you can only go on insurance if you have, if it's open enrollment or you have a, I'll say major life change, but there's a real expression.
Life-changing event, yeah.
That.
Qualifying
And
event,
a
right?
qualifying event,
Qualifying
yeah.
event.
So I'm not sure that choosing to hop off at one workplace would qualify, but, so I'm working on the research a little bit of, I think like school districts are all July 1 probably, would be open enrollment. And so people who have a spouse or a parent who were an educator or a municipal employee, that could work. But I don't know yet if it could work for people whose spouse or parent whose plan they'd want to hop on work for IBM, or you know what I mean? Because if they wouldn't be able to get on those benefits, then they couldn't come off of ours. And there'd be a lot of things to work out, like a contract that says, if you lose those other benefits and come back, we get back what we gave you. But I just share that by way of saying I really am trying to come up with creative ways to save us money. I don't know if anybody would even take it, because I haven't said it out loud past Nancy and the guys at Brown and Brown, but it is something that I kind of continue to explore and figure out if it's actually feasible.
But it runs a risk against the clock, because our budget is due to the Board of Selectmen soon.
Right.
So, and then if you start to have people give you their word, that's not a contract, right? So
No.
they can renege on that because life changes, and then you've bet on that savings, which now is no longer a savings.
It would not benefit us. We would not know that information quickly enough to do anything before the board approves the budget to the public.
Yeah.
It would take
A
a
hustle.
little bit this spring to negotiate with all the unions, figure out the math on how much we could offer so that people might take it and still have it work to our good, right? Because we already have some people who don't take our benefits, so there's some legwork there, but
So what you're saying is, and I just want to make sure I understand this, is that we have a younger workforce, do we?
we're about half and half, right?
Well, we've hired a lot of new
Young
folks,
teachers,
so,
okay.
yeah.
So would it, if we were to fund an HSA specifically and have them choose to take that, seeing as they're probably, it would work out better for them, probably. in
That
ma-
is
in
what our
many
plan
ways.
is.
It's a-
That's what
already-
you're saying.
No, our plan is an HSA currently.
Okay,
What I was saying is pay them to get off our plan altogether.
okay.
I think it's worth looking into I think it's worth looking into for sure, and just kind of, if you could come back with some details on what you could do, as long as it's legal, right?
Legal and ethical, yep. I mean, I'm not we would never say to someone, go without benefits. I don't even think you can anymore.
No, right, so you would need proof that they're getting on someone else's benefits
Right.
before you give them the so-called check to say, thank you very much and goodbye, right?
So it's a half-baked idea, but unless you look at me and say, what are you, out of your mind? I'll continue to work on it and at least see if,
I'd say continue to work on it, because if it doesn't benefit us this year, it's gonna benefit us down the road.
Next year.
Because you're looking at, last year, it went up, 100 and, it went up exponentially last year and then this year's going up even more, so.
Could you,
And
This
to-
is actually.
This
the-
year, yeah. it's
and could you give me an example? Say I am, say I'm working for the Winchester Public Schools and you offer this to me and I say, okay, so how much, so say it's just me, right? And so, how much are we paying like
That
for?
won't work.
It won't work for just me? Like if I say, okay, I'm gonna go with another plan with someone else, like
Oh.
with, right?
you're 24 and you
Right,
could
at
go on your
24, I'm
parents'
going on with my
plan.
mom. Explain to me, how much first is my plan, are we paying for my plan for the Board of Ed, and then how much,
I'm gonna do really loosely, okay?
okay,
A single person, and it depends a little bit if you're a teacher or a para, because all the plans are different. There's a lot. Before I do that, I did want to say, Kurt, your point is really well taken, and even if we take this idea and develop it slowly and carefully to launch for next budget season, I was told by Brown and Brown that we should be tickled pink with our 11.9% because we had a cap based on we were already in a contract with them, and this is the end of that. And that had we not had that contract, our number could have easily been double this, as many towns are. So next year, where we are no longer, not that we're leaving our consortium, but I guess like every other kind of contract, we had a cap guarantee for this year. We don't have a cap for next year, so it could be catastrophically different. So first of all, I wonder how do we have no leverage whatsoever, but let's talk about how do we get a cap now for next year.
So what had happened was, when Anthem, we first changed from Connecticut to Anthem, Anthem came on with a second-year cap. And so Brown and Brown was successfully rolling, another cap forward. But with the way the insurance rates have gone, Anthem gave a hard no on
Yeah.
that, yeah.
So I would appreciate your point that even if we don't pull it off in the moment, it is worth exploring. And actually, if our timing were different, it might allow people to make that decision when their open enrollments are in their own companies. So that actually makes me think a lot about having it ready well before we need it. And so to your example, I believe very loosely, it's not quite $1,000 a month, but I think we pay about $1,000 a month, or the plan is $1,000 a month, let's say, for one person. So that would be $12,000 for the year. Let's say you're contributing 20%, because I can do that math a little bit in my head. So 12,000, 10% would be 1,200, so 2,400 off the 12,000, so we're at 9,600, I think. But now we're funding your HSA less for just one person? Or is it 2,000 everywhere?
It's half their
1,500.
deductible, so whatever their deductible is.
So,
So call it 1,000.
so we're back around 10,000, 11,000, something like that. So we took out the percentage that you're gonna contribute, we covered your HSA, so I think our cost on that is around $11,000 or $12,000. So much like our teacher's contract currently that offers different amounts based on if you would be walking away from single coverage, double coverage, or family coverage, we probably could create a plan that replicated that concept and say, so it's costing us $11,000 to do this. I'm not missing any huge chunks of anything, right? That's the whole of it. So where the teacher's contract, and right now I think it's only the teachers that have that?
I believe so. There might be one other bargaining unit. I'd have to double check.
So we could consider whether we want to offer it to all the people who take our benefits. But again, all of these are not thought out and we'd calculate them all.
I was just looking for like kind of
So
an
if it's
example with just rough
$11,000
numbers.
for a 24-year-old teacher, and they currently can get maybe $1,000 for not taking our benefits, they may not look at that as like, you know,
Because
why
they-
would I do that?
They would have to pay the increase on the new insurance that they're going to.
Right.
It might
But-
come out in the wash.
And I imagine in talking, maybe just to sort of the average man on the street amongst our people, we might get a feel for, I just feel like if you said to someone who's on our family plan where it's the better part of $30,000, hey, you know, you're gonna get $5,000, they might not be so worried about like, what's the difference in my monthly contribution and what's in the coverage as much as, wow, $5,000, my family and I can take this great trip. Talk about wellness, like, there's gotta be an amount of money where someone says, all coverages are more or less the same and off we go. So anything that's less than we're paying is a win. So the question is, what would that threshold be to get people to do it? And when would we have to time it so that they can hop on another coverage?
I appreciate the idea of being creative in the thinking. Does the teacher's contract allow the Board of Ed to go shopping for a provider?
Yes.
Just has to be equivalent coverage,
Okay.
substantially equivalent. There's language in all contracts
But
about
we're in that consortium, right? So we would have to stay with that consortium's,
Well, the
Insurer?
consortium shopped us this year. I mean,
Yeah.
they shop us every year
yeah, okay,
to make sure that we're getting the best deal.
okay. And this year it's Anthem. Well, a couple of years it's been Anthem from Connecticut. Okay. Thank you.
So if I could suggest then, the document that I brought you photocopied, and I apologize, there was just no way I was gonna get typed numbers and in the corners, yeah.
Which one is it?
That was just, yeah,
Okay.
beyond my skill level. I wanna show you what that corresponds with. In our budget book, the detail budget in the back, which is about the third page of the last section, looks like this, which is the big bananas. It's got all of the lines and all of the money in it. One of the things that's important in this, to my thinking, is that it does have the actual spending in each line in '23 and '24,
So it's in the
all the way in
tab-
the back, appendices,
Appendices, okay,
about 3
last
pages
tab.
in.
I'm gonna request, that's on one of my things, is if we could have a, next time, a numbered budget book, yeah, so we know what.
Yep,
it's so much
absolutely.
easier.
There's little tables of contents, but yes,
Yeah.
pages would have been
Pages
good.
are easy.
Which is why I numbered these, but
It starts with benefits, is that what we're looking at?
exactly. So the benefits we were just talking about, everything in the ones and twos, as you know, are personnel and largely contractual, or like social security and unemployment, like those aren't things we have any control over. So what I did was I went through, you'll see the top page that I handed you starts at 319, which is the beginning of non-payroll or non-personnel, if you will, related expenses. It's all of
Okay.
the accounts that don't go for our employees directly.
Okay, hold on a second, are we okay? Everybody know where you are? Okay, thank you.
So the one that's in the book will show you, for example, like when we talk about the lawyer, that's a great, we're gonna start at 319 anyway, so what I sent you and handed you matches that. It's every line from 319 to the end of the budget, and either there is a page behind it with fine grain detail, or there's a note here why we didn't do it, because there was nothing to put on a piece of paper. Or if there's a dash, that means there's no money in our budget for it, so there's no need for an explanation, because there's no money. So on the one in the book, you can see the actual for the last 2 years. Obviously, fiscal year '25 is in progress, so we don't have actual yet on that. We're living that budget now. So in those first two legal lines, you'll see one is special education and one is general education, basically, or everything that isn't special education, I guess you would say. And that's the spending in '23. The combination was about 17,000. In '24, the spending was about 32,000 collectively. Because of the budget cuts last year and looking for places to indicate drops, the budget this year has 13,000 in it. Nancy, to date, we've spent, did you tell me about 9? Did I make that
No,
up?
we've already blown the budget.
Oh, it's gone already, okay.
It's gone,
Um,
yeah. We had personnel issues over the summer that Freeman was dealing with.
So you'll see the first page that I gave you in your handout matches line 319. So you'll see on it account 319, legal. We have two different attorneys we use. One is, they're both with Shipman. One is the special education guru, and the other is everything else. Largely, only Kathy and myself access the attorneys. Obviously, from time to time, Nora on behalf of the board. Utilize them for doing contract when I was hired and perhaps when you worked with Freeman. But largely, when you all ask policy questions, we call them.
When we text her, we get charged.
Anytime there's a situation where we need legal guidance, we reach out. I take great pride that the January bill was like $240 or something. I am trying desperately not to lean on an attorney, especially when I have lots of good friends who are long-sitting superintendents. When in doubt, phone a friend. And I'm pretty good with the law, and I know how to read the Mooney book. So, I will always call to keep us out of trouble if there's something that needs to be called. I wouldn't want you to think I'm being arrogant about it, but I also trust my own judgment and don't call for every little thing. So we are budgeting for next year $20,000. We have not spent that, we're probably getting close to that now, and we spent more than that the year before, so we think that's, if anything, a modest amount to put in that line.
Yeah, so far this month, we had spent a little over $20,000.
Oh, so we've already hit that.
Yeah, yep.
Great.
There was an inordinate amount of usage of legal services over the summer, so it was most unusual.
Okay. Do you have any questions about so I combined for ease the two 319s together, but you can see on there, it's the 10 and the 10 in the budget. Is there anything I can answer about that line?
Can I just ask about the summer? Is it, without breaking in, I guess, any confidentiality, what was it that we used an inordinate amount of legal service fees for, that we've already blown our budget?
The receiver leaned on the lawyer quite a bit while he was here. And there was a personnel issue that he was trying to finish up that Mel had started working on before she left, and it lingered a bit. But a lot of it was he did lean on the attorneys a lot during the transition.
Thank you.
And then Shipman reviewed Julie's contract?
Right.
If
but
you
that
might
would be-
recall.
Sure, but that would be standard. I was asking about summer, what happened this summer. That answers it.
So the next line, 322, you don't have a sheet for because, again, as I mentioned, we don't budget any money for professional development outside of what's in the Title II grant. The next line is 325, school doctors. That is a set amount. Dr. Milanese works at Connecticut Children's. It is, I don't know if it's legally required, but it is standard practice, and maybe it's required that you have a medical advisor. You need someone who can guide and oversee your nurses. Like, you can't really evaluate and supervise a nurse if you don't have a nursing background. So Dr. Milanese provides guidance for us in terms of our nursing. When our nurses are unsure of how to handle a situation, they reach out to her. We had a medical situation, I think it was right before Thanksgiving, where somebody had a communicable disease and we needed to learn quickly. And I reached out to our health department, but also to Dr. Milanese for guidance on, you know, is this the kind of thing we have to notify people? How do we handle this? What kind of cleaning do we need to do? Things like that. So that's a service that I'm pretty sure every school district has in place. That is one of the things that I mentioned when I met with Greg. Would that have been last week already? Yes, when I met with him last Friday, that Gilbert has a medical advisor for 8,000 and something, and we have this one, and that we could approach both of them and ask, would you be willing to view us as one district, and what would you charge us? And maybe the less expensive one would only up her rate a little bit, and so that's something that we can work on, seeing if we can get either one, if Gilbert's willing to do that. Any more questions that I could answer about Dr. Milanese? Nope. Super. And feel free to prompt me quicker, slower. My goal tonight is that when we get to the end of this pile, you will feel that you know where every penny in this budget goes, for better or worse. I can't guarantee you'll like what you see, but I want you at a minimum when you leave tonight to know. So the next line, 326, I did not make you a piece of paper for. We don't employ a physical therapist, but we do have students who require physical therapy as part of their special education program, and so that is, you know, contracted with outside providers as needed by the IEP. Similarly, the outside evaluations, again, by IEP, that's when we need to do evaluations that are beyond the scope of what our one school psychologist is able to perform for us, whether it's quantity or type of testing. If we need a neuropsych, if we need a psychiatric, those are going to be things we can't provide. And again, those numbers you'll see are based on our usage history. Sort of, if you look at the 30 is sort of an average of the couple years before that. They're not pulled out of thin air, but they're also, you can't calculate an actual, because you never know exactly what you're gonna need, but using your couple of years of actual gives you a decent sense of what it's likely to be, which is what makes budgeting so much fun, because there are some things you just can't possibly know ahead of time. So then the next page that I do have for you is the other professional services, line 340. And you'll see there's $30,000 in the budget, and language line is how we are able to communicate with people who don't speak English. It's a great service, actually, phenomenal. Audiology services is through special education. Relay Hub is, I mentioned, or I may have called it CompuClean earlier, but that is how we access that 65 or so thousand, I lost that piece of paper, but the Medicaid money, that 5,000. How much? 73,000, lovely. 72? Sorry. So that 72,000 comes at a cost of 5,000. This is what we agreed to for Tom Dillon, 2,000 a month for the 10 months of the school year. And this line, CABE, is budgeted for, whether it would be Mary Broderick or someone else, but for things like facilitating our board retreat. We'll definitely do that again in the summer. Perhaps next year we'll do a couple different things, but it's CABE facilitation. And it doesn't necessarily have to be CABE, but since we use CABE this year, that's what I indicated. But there's lots of other great people as well if we wanted to do something different. So 340, next is 341 is the auditor. That is,
Julie.
oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I want to ask a question.
Looking at too many pieces of paper to.
Right, I know, there's a lot. with the student safety, I know that Gilbert is currently looking for an ASO, and I don't believe they've found one yet.
They're having a hard time.
Right,
They
yes.
interviewed one person, and this process has been at least over a month. And I guess they have another candidate that they're potentially gonna be interviewing.
Right. And so one of the reasons that we hired Tom Dillon, right, was because he came with the ability to reach out to his known community and find us somebody that
Yep.
would be good. Have we talked, I mean, granted, the money is still going to come out of our budget, but a cost sharing perhaps? Because if they're having a difficult time, maybe they would be willing to share Tom Dillon. Or are they sharing? Do they have Tom? Are they
You're
using
asking
anybody?
would they want in on that. Funny enough, I
Yeah.
met with Tom today, because we're working on setting up interviews. We have 10 applicants for our position.
Yep.
Only 2 of them are applicants for armed security, and 9 of them, because one person is willing to do both, are for unarmed, but perhaps the flexibility of this board is allowing us a bigger pool of people. And Tom is still reaching out to people he knows, to see if he can grow more candidates on that list for us. But when we met today, he actually suggested that he could advise all 3. He was looking to increase his time in doing that and saying he could be in district like 2.5 days a week, or 2 days a week in district and a half day remotely. And that way, and he's flexible with his days. He said that way, if Gilbert has an ASO, Tom is ex-police and able to carry, so he could stand in if their ASO was out, if our SSO or ASO was out, he could actually sub for that person on that day, as well as, oversee all 3.
Which would help us too, right? Because we were talking perhaps about having 3 people just in case we need to, right? So that's again, one of the ways I think that we can draw Gilbert in, is perhaps they would be willing to also utilize Tom.
And he, I'm sure, would be willing to do that. Today, the way he talked about it, it would cost us a little bit more, because he was looking at adding time to do the 3
Right, and I
well.
understand that, yeah.
Especially since his bill was actually supposed to be much more than that. And I was like, no, I'm not going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
He does love us and is a good sport. But I think having him oversee all 3, some of the points he made were things like our evacuation plans. I obviously am not privy to Gilbert's, but having like Gilbert and Hinsdale in such proximity, if one of the schools even needed to dump because of, say, a gas leak or something,
Right.
it's not hard to fathom that the other school might be a place we'd want to go. So having one shared school safety person, I think, would be phenomenal, and I would happily draw them into that plan.
Thanks.
Okay, 341, the auditor. So, as part of accounting practices, we are required to do an annual audit. Because we share finances sort of overlapping with the town picks the auditor that does both the town and the schools, and we just get a bill. We have literally no interaction there other than providing the information.
They do bid it,
The town does.
yes.
So there's, not much to say about that one. It's just, is what it is. Technology services, 352, we have a sheet for that. Okay, so technology services, we use Eric, right? So we have a young man at Advanced, Eric. Our technology person, Joe, you've seen him, he's scurried in a few times and tried to troubleshoot for us, works 4 days a week. And his salary reflects that. He's a .8 employee. So we have, I don't know if I want to say a contract, but we use Eric in a few different ways. We use Eric when Joe is not with us and we have tech needs. We also use Eric because his skill set complements Joe's. He is very much on the infrastructure. He's the guy that can come in and like update your communications closet and things like that. Joe does a lot of amazing things, but we need that extra layer of service in order to be able to function. And when Joe comes across something he can't figure out, he's got Eric, like Joe is on vacation right now, and the phones and internet were down at Hinsdale, and Eric was on the job at 6:30 in the morning when we reached out to him and said, help. So, and that is not a guaranteed amount, it's an hourly, like, if we need less, we use less. But as you can see from the amounts, that's not an exorbitant amount. And it's a nice compliment, if you will, with Joe being 4 days and having the time with Eric. You could combine Joe's salary and the money we pay for Eric into one human being, but we get an expanded skill set by doing it that way.
And if Eric is not available, Ed Advance can always send somebody else over too, which is great.
Yes.
How often do we need, like, is tech pretty much a 5-day-a-week?
It is. So Eric, in theory, might work up to 8 hours a week. He's paid hourly, $55 an hour. And it, looking at historical utilization, that's how we landed on the number that we did.
Right, but like with Joe, that's like, he's shared between the two schools, and he is on call, and he's always plugging up those computers and
And he's
rebooting
great.
things. Yeah.
Needless to say, to not even have Joe full-time is unusual. To not have a single tech person on site throughout every school day
Sure.
leaves you a little bit vulnerable. Never mind like the teacher whose computer crashes in the middle of teaching, but, your power school goes down, the principal needs to do a presentation, and, it would be very common to have someone at the tech level, always one per building, who's there just getting Chromebooks ready for kids and taking the 3 that broke yesterday and fixing them or replacing them. But we don't have those techs. We are, I'm going to say, below like the bare minimum of what you should have for tech support. And we're little, so we get away
We
with
can
it.
manage.
But anything less than we would not be functioning.
Does Joe help us with filters to make sure that kids are using these devices appropriately?
Oh, yeah. You'll see when we get to some of the software lines and things, like, he sets up all of the appropriate filters and things on the network, and we have products that,
iReady is run through this, and so that has to be installed, or is that's a network, that's an online web-based? Do we use Chromebooks for testing?
yep,
So he has to run those. And then Power School, if it goes down or has a virus, would he be consulting with Power School people?
very much so. So
Okay.
you'll remember that recently there was a Power School breach, and Joe and Charlene both were very involved and reaching out to their networks, and, between them, they were able to, like, dig into, I don't even know the right words, Tori, you would know better than me, like, they were able to go back and see, like, what packets of data were compromised and things, and,
Okay,
so, yeah, that kind of stuff.
gotcha. Thank you.
Could I just add to?
Of course.
We also have a cyber insurance policy, and they have a whole protocol set up that if something, hits the fan, there's a whole team that we immediately have access to, and this one does this, and this one does that, and it's very well done.
So like if you're being phished to pay a bill and accidentally pay that bill, then we would work with Joe and this agency through the
Absolutely.
cyber insurance company. And Joe would be the point on that on that problem. Okay,
And those things do
happen.
in Plymouth.
They do. Okay.
Okay.
Joe regularly sends out phishing tests
Yeah.
to our staff
Yeah.
to see if
who
anybody's
is
going to
vulnerable.
bite.
He got me.
Follows up with those people.
And I know. That's why I don't even go on the email anymore at all.
They're getting really good, too. I keep getting text messages like, you have a Easy Pass payment overdue, but I get them on my work phone, and I'm like, how would my work phone know my license plate? Like, that's baloney, but if it was on my personal phone, it might confuse me. Yeah, no, there's all kinds of stuff. Oh, goodness.
Thank you for the levity.
Line 353, we've discussed, that is for substitute nurses which come through an agency and cost an arm and a leg. I did approach Gilbert with the request that would they consider, they have 2 nurses in the building on a day where we needed one. Greg gave it consideration and said they wouldn't be able to do that. And I say Greg only because he communicated the message. I think he said that was like a conversation with the board. But simply, I have an email from Greg where he said, unfortunately, we cannot do that.
That they can't share somebody if one of ours is sick.
That
That's what
they
you
would
mean?
not be able to have one of their nurses come cover.
Right. Okay.
So I would not take that money out of the budget because
Right.
we can't go without a nurse in the school, unfortunately. I mean, from time to time, the nurses are out and we can't find subs, and
Barb does a good job.
Barb does a great job. But that is not ideal. So when we can get subs, we do get subs. And we do have medically fragile students.
Right.
So I mean, we've been in a position of calling a parent and saying, we want to make you aware, and the parents will come pick their kids up if there's not a nurse in the building, and that's unfortunate and
That's
shouldn't be the
unacceptable.
case. And yet, at times is unavoidable if we don't have a nurse and we can't find a sub. I mean, even though legally we're needing to have one, you can't do what you can't do. But, so we do try to cover with subs to the extent that we can.
Did you guys get that at the board meeting? Did they ask that question to you?
They didn't mention that last night, I don't believe. Kurt or
No,
Jonathan?
I didn't, nope.
I can just double check quick.
I don't know if it would be a question for the board as opposed to.
It's possible, maybe I've, I wanted to let you know, my board approved the budget as presented, blah, blah, blah. We also discussed, so I'm inferring the board efficiencies that you and I discussed, such as Frontline and Power School. We budgeted for plowing. The concept of sharing a nurse is not one that we can do.
Okay.
So that was my inference, that it was a decision with the board, but it could have easily been with the admin team, or who knows.
Okay. 510?
So that was 353. So 509 McKinney-Vento, under the law, we have obligations to provide children who are protected as homeless, whether they're on our end and perhaps have lost their housing in Winsted and are doubled up and living with a relative in Torrington, or vice versa. Under McKinney-Vento, we split the transportation costs of getting the child back to their home school. So it's not a line we've carried in the budget before, but the reality is it happens. I think it's already happening, so.
We've already exceeded $2,000 this year.
Right, so,
And that's to do what again? It's to bring children who are homeless.
to their home school, to the school they were attending prior to becoming homeless. The McKinney-Vento law is designed, I will take some liberties here, but my interpretation anyway is that it is designed to cause the least disruption to students' education based on family financial hardship. So it also addresses things like unaccompanied minors, like that 16-year-old who gets thrown out of the house and is sleeping on the couch of a friend and can no longer get to the school they're used to attending, or the family that is going to go move in with someone else until they can afford to get their place back, or people who are really like, a week in this house, a week in that house.
So these are children that end up in Winsted that we are then transporting.
So both directions,
Both
right?
directions.
So imagine you live in Torrington and you've lost your home, and you've had the grace to be offered the basement in someone's home here in Winsted, but you don't want to take your 3 kids out of school, you want them to go back to Torrington. Torrington is obligated to provide transportation to come get your kids regardless, or, you know, maybe your house burnt down and now you're staying in a hotel 2 towns away. If you're our kid and you're in that hotel because your house burned down, we have to send a
get
van
you.
for you.
Right.
Doesn't have to be a van. You can do all kinds of creative things with Ubers and buses and whatnot, but,
Paying families.
and historically, it was the district who owned the kid, paid all of the transportation expenses, and I believe it's only in maybe the last year that it's become a split thing.
It's a little bit longer than that. I don't remember exactly when it happened, because we'd always been asked if we would split it. And for a very long time, we had the option to say no. And then, I'm gonna say sometime within the last 5 to 6 years, easily, it became mandatory that both districts had to split the cost 50/50.
Okay. And you're saying we've already exceeded.
We've
Just since
exceeded.
I've been- Just since I've come on here, we've had more requests.
Okay.
So you're bad luck.
No, that was not nice. We like
I
Kathy.
think it's just how things are
I'm
going,
joking.
the economy and everything.
Yeah.
She's so glad to have an excuse to say it. She's like, I'm out.
We'll take care of him after the
stay.
board meeting.
Nice try, though.
He was trying to talk toys.
Okay, so next up is the 510 line, which is field trip transportation. So when we do trips that are just for fun, which we don't do much of that, because that's not a good use of school time, but I think the end of 6th grade, there's like a special,
What did you just say?
Just
the
gloss
just for
over that.
fun.
Yeah.
You know, the, like, we're going to Holiday Hills or whatever. Right. It doesn't mean it can't
Like
also
to the
be fun.
museum or to the.
Yes.
Yeah.
Socialization is part of the curriculum.
Listen, this is like my, we don't ever cut the field trip budget.
Okay, then I won't belabor it.
No, please don't, because
But-
these kids need to go out.
And this is just the transportation piece of that?
Yep.
And obviously, this isn't like a hard, you know, this is the allocation per grade, but this is just to sort of show you the mindset of how we come to that number.
This is just for the bus.
This
to
is
get
the
them
bus,
to-
right.
To the museum.
When it's a trip like the Boulder Ridge, families are obviously
Has to pay.
paying the bulk of that. PTO usually does some fundraising against it. But the trips that are curricularly based, like going to see a show or going to a museum, Talcott Mountain, Discovery,
Yep.
White Memorial, all of those things,
You don't
we
need to
really
explain
need to
that one.
support because
Absolutely. Nope.
we can't, it's curriculum, we want you to go.
We want these kids to have experiences.
Exactly. So that's what that is. So that's the 510. I, again, just mushed together the 2 schools because it didn't seem worth 2 pieces of paper. 511, I've not provided to you. The line in the budget is literally calculated. There's a worksheet that obviously I can't share with you with all of the identified students, their placements, their tuition costs, their transportation costs. And that's just strictly calculated based on that. So there's nothing that I can share there other than to tell you that it is not a spitball number, it is a calculated number.
So just, let me ask you for 512. So the in-district transport service for special ed has gone up 15%, right? And that's just, how do they justify that? Have we gotten more students? They're going to different places?
This is the in-district, the van's at $375 a day. Kathy, I don't want to put you on the spot, but
I'm gonna hazard a guess to say that that's covered by the transportation contract.
Yeah, which one are you asking about?
512?
512.
one?
There's
First
three,
one.
6,
First
6, 7.
512.
Oh, sorry, Nance, the C.
6, 6, 7.
512C.
Okay.
There's an
So,
increase,
yes,
both of
so
them
that's-
actually, because
yeah,
the other
so
one's
that's in-district,
16.75.
sped transportation, and that's contractual.
What about the line that's 6,600, 600,067?
667,506.
Those are the out-of-district students.
That's Oliver Wilcott,
No, that is
special ed.
special ed
Oh.
outplaced.
special
Sure.
ed out,
This
and
one right
what,
here.
can we have how many kids is that encompass?
Well, this particular number encompasses, I want to say, 36
No.
Let me just check my cheat
do we
sheet.
have?
So let me back up one step. Tori, if you look at line 511, OOD Transportation Services SPED,
Yes.
that's out of district, and then the 512 out of district SPED X. That is the same cost center. Nancy splits them because there's cool math that goes on there, because some students hit that Seek G, some kids hit that excess cost. So those two lines together are really the same category, but it's split. Some of the kids will not hit that number. The reason she budgets them separately is because then she offsets the ones with the EX there, means they're gonna go over the excess cost. And so anything above the excess cost, she subtracts back out the 60% of the greater than 4.5 times. Her spreadsheets work hard.
Are you talking about transportation, or are you talking about tuition?
Well, we're
Transportation.
talking about
We're talking about
transportation, but
transportation at this time.
same conversation, right?
Not exactly, no. It's
Okay.
not.
But I want to ask the question, because I want to go back to the original question.
Yes.
Right, because we're at six, like Tor said, 667, right? With a $95,000 increase at a 16.75. Is that increase because of number of students? Or have they increased their prices? I get it's contractual. How do they, if it's not number of students, how
Okay,
are we justifying a
So
16%
the first
increase?
512 number is three type 2 buses at $386 a day.
Yep,
And then extended school year type 2 buses at $386 a day, plus special ed going to Oliver Wolcott.
Yep.
Because they have a half-day pickup. Then the next is our out-of-district placements that are special education. And then the last one is our regular education transportation, and that's 7 type 1 buses at $426 a day, plus $34,000 in fuel that we buy with the town, and then the town, we have to pay the town back for as much fuel as we need.
Her question is the increase because of increased numbers of students, or is it an increase for some other
Do
reason?
you know what the rates were last year?
They were 3% less.
Well, the out-of-district,
So we're
the
talking.
out-of-district isn't contractual in the same way.
It's
That's,
not contractual at all.
right, that's, we have a student who goes to PPT tomorrow, and the PPT decides the student is going to have a placement at CJR. Then Kathy's office gets on the phone and finds a transportation, unless we happen to already have the good fortune someone's already going there, and we can just pop this kiddo on there. So not every kid has a additional transportation cost, but let's say no one's going there. We find a carrier willing to do it, and what does it cost? If it sounds out of wing, we'll keep calling other places, I'm sure, to get the best price. But those are, and I don't have the number in front of me to tell you how many students were in the 571, 740. I can tell you that this year's number is built on the kids who are currently attending out-of-district placements and their actual transportation costs increased by whatever percent the pundits say it's likely to go up.
right, so, but that's what I'm asking, so.
I
maybe
would
I'm
guess
not-
that there's different students, right? Because,
It's almost a $96,000 increase. We're paying $1.6 million in transportation, right? And we have a $95,000 increase, 32 and 13.
yeah,
15 and 6, almost 17%. Is that, again, because of the increase in students?
It's the increase in students, and it's the increase in the rates. The transportation companies are gouging us.
That's, okay,
Yes.
so now you're getting to my,
yeah.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So,
And, well, not
So
just the
my question-
transportation companies, because I'm looking at line 512 with the 0 in front of it, or the O, or whatever you got there.
OOD? It says
OOD, right.
That's
Out of district.
That's what I'm
And then I'm
talking
looking at,
is the 95,000.
I'm looking at line 560, the top one in the
Yep.
back there. So I'm looking at for 16 students, or 16 to 30 students, it's like well over $2 million.
Yeah,
we're
that's
paying.
right.
That's
So-
correct?
Right, yeah, that's right. So, and that's why I think the state is actually kind of looking into it. I know they have
I
like a
heard that
focus
today.
group that, I actually participated online when they
I
were
did
here.
as
They were
well,
supposed to
yep.
come to Winston,
Yep.
but it was a
Kathy
snow
did.
day.
Yeah.
Kathy, I think, and
I
also
was.
Julie.
Nora,
You were there
Sandra,
too,
yep. I was
Nora.
on it.
So,
Trying to get the
I
state
think
to do
there's,
more.
a lot of towns are are having this issue, and they're
Right.
trying to, they're struggling and trying to figure out how, the state's trying to figure out how they can,
What is,
make changes.
Well, without
to-
getting
to
too
it.
far off our agenda here of doing
Yeah.
this, we're looking at it right now is we can't really even be told really due to confidentiality about it.
Right.
And then it's the hugest part of our budget.
Right.
So,
And we
but
have
we're
to
all in
fund
agreement
it.
on that, so let's not beat a dead
I mean,
horse.
we can't,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
what is the reimbursement from the state for special ed costs? Is there a percentage?
We're utilizing 60% in this budget because they've not been funding. Now, if things change with legislation and it's voted on Monday, then, maybe we can increase that up to 70%. But again, these are projections that are being done, months in advance of the year even starting, and there can be a change in the kids, and it's a volatile population.
Yes,
So,
right, and it can change.
and there's some
Mid-year,
things that
end of-
fall out.
yes,
So
right.
to think you're gonna get, full freight on, whatever the state is currently saying, on every single dollar that's in the projection is
Right.
just wishful thinking.
Wishful,
So I tend
okay.
to be a little more conservative in what I'm estimating the discount will be on the excess cost grant, or the SEECG.
Okay, so so now, my next question is, you're telling me that the buses are gouging us, and it appears that they are.
Not our regular transportation.
Not all-star
No,
transportation.
the-
No.
Right.
But the special ed,
The
so,
special ed vans and such that we're having to hire.
so we're having to individually contract out for each special ed child?
Well,
No.
Okay,
individual in the sense of we need to arrange for each child, but we double up or
right,
more.
but we double up, right, we try to,
Well, we can't,
correct.
we do. We
Okay.
have to take into consideration aggression, safety concerns.
Sure, okay.
Between students,
Same
Yep.
placement.
same needs for the monitors being on there.
On the bus with them.
And it's something that we go through. I mean, I look at the invoices every day, I'm talking to Jen. When we have a kid who needs transportation, and we have to go through 6 or 7 different vendors to get one quote, it's not even like we're getting
A ton
things
of
where we
quotes.
can compare.
You're not.
Right,
We're lucky when we're actually finding transportation for kids.
This is my retirement plan. I'm gonna
Yeah.
buy a van and get a license. I kid you not.
retirement
Not gouge people.
But gouge them less.
Yes.
I'll be a billionaire.
Alton Transportation.
But
Well-
they can't get drivers, like we can't get personnel to,
It's hard to find.
hire people.
Yeah.
They can't get drivers, they can't get monitors. They have vehicles sitting in their lots not being used because they don't have drivers.
The
Right.
other thing I'll remind us all is that the transportation and tuition for out-of-district is not just the pre-K 6 population, that is a pre-K 12. That's all
To 22.
out-of-district.
Isn't it
Right.
beyond 12? Yeah.
22.
22.
The fourth page from the appendix tab has a list of numbers projected out of district student tuition. That's not the busing, but we had talked about Kathy maybe coming up with some innovative plans.
We're talking
try
about
to-
feasibility studies for
That's
next
it.
year for the 18-22 population.
And we had talked about, and I mean, I don't know if it is feasible, but you're telling me there's vans sitting there. We had talked, I think 2 years ago, right, Tor? You had said something about why, if we were to take this on ourselves as a district to hire drivers to drive these students rather than relying on, I mean, we're, right now, I think, right, we're paying
Insurance,
almost
vans, and drivers.
$800,000, right, to transport,
I don't know
These
what it
children.
would cost us to do that, so I don't even want to hazard a guess.
right.
I will
But
say,
I also want to say that since we can't get people to fill our para positions right now,
Right.
Yeah.
You're not gonna get
You're not
drivers.
trying to find drivers who are going to show up every single day,
And manage them.
manage them. and be
Supervise them.
substitutes
I
for
think
them,
that was the last,
that.
is what we came to the
I'm not
conclusion of.
sure
I don't get it.
We,
Where are all these?
we
How
addressed
many
that question once with Melanie.
Would you
We
say
do-
we have
Yeah.
going out on a given day?
We have 24 students in PPT placed out of district placements. We have 7 students in what I refer to as parent choice options, like the VOAG, the
Generations,
Seven,
Oliver Wilkins.
Oliver Wilkins.
Yep.
That are separate, right? They're not included in what I look at as your high-cost students. The 24 students are what you're looking at when you're looking at the high tuition and the high transportation. And those students are placed out of district when they exceed the ability of the public school
Right.
within the public environment to service and provide safely and accurately and consistently the services and educational program that the student needs. These students, and I've looked at their programs, and I'm going out, and so is Sarah Shackner, we're going out, we're visiting them. We're not just sitting in and doing virtual meetings, we're making sure that time is put aside on our calendars to get out there and observe them and see them. So that when Julie's asking me, is there anybody who can be brought back? I'm not just going off of what I'm reading on paper, I'm going off of what I'm seeing in person. And I'm going to say, we've got some very complex and complicated scenarios in those 24 seats that we do not have the personnel to provide for here in this district, in our public schools. The nursing care that some of them need, the related services, the behavioral services. We have 27 hours a week of BCBA coverage for everybody, Hinsdale, Pearson, Gilbert, and they are going to all three of those schools in the 4.5 days that we have them, for the limited time that we have them. The majority of our kids who are out of district are in behavioral-based programs. Each one of them has dedicated BCBAs, registered behavioral technicians, as well as behavior technicians working with them. So when I'm looking at who we can bring back, when I'm looking at where's the bandwidth or the group, age-wise, grade-wise, if you will, where it looks to be the most feasible to do a study look at, it's that 18 to 22 transition population. Pre-K to 6, we have 6 kids placed out of district currently. 7 to 12, we have 12. Now, some of those students have been placed out for the majority of their education because of their complex needs. Don't know that they're never gonna come back. I don't have a crystal ball, I can't tell the future. But with the current situation that we have here in Winchester, we would not be able to effectively meet their needs, which would then lead to a very significant increase in legal expenditures, which, if I gotta put money out somewhere, I want it to go to kids. I don't want it to go to lawyers. So, am I bad luck? Maybe.
Kids were here before you
I
and.
always be honest with you about what we're dealing with. I 100% will be. I hide nothing. I'm transparent and I'll own what I need to own. But that's where we are. What's today's date? I'm 5 days short of my third month I think. So 5 days short of 90 days, that's what I know right now.
Kath, so you're saying so it's the 18 to 22 age group that we have like 6 people in outplacement?
In different placements, and not all of them would be eligible to, as I say, to be brought back, right?
Kathy, can you come up to speak to the microphone, because it's a lot of conversation and people at home?
Yeah,
It should be on, but I don't know if it is.
I don't think it is. I don't see a red light.
Yeah,
Use Tori's.
or, yeah, I can borrow Tori's.
I don't need a chair. Yeah, I don't need, okay. So.
Yeah, you have to, because it's awkward otherwise.
So, yeah, we have about 6 kids in the 18 to 22 range with varying and complex needs, as well as some that aren't so complex. But because we don't have an 18 to 22-year program for Winchester Public Schools, the practice has been to seek outside supports for that. There's a program right here in town where a number of our students attend, our young adults attend. Julie and I have been talking, I've been talking with Sarah Shackner, we're going to take next year to do a feasibility study and look at whether or not it's cost efficient to try and create our own program here based on who we see coming up, how many students might be able to benefit from that, Whether or not we have students we could pull back. I don't know all of their ages. We do have quite a number of kids in the 20 to 22 range, so by the time we got this going, those students may be gone. We also remember that in that when you turn 18, you become a student of majority age. So a student who's 18 years old, if a parent has not gone to probate court to maintain their educational decision-making rights, that student can walk in at any point in time, say, I'm done with school. And we have to respect that. We have to give them their credentials. If they've earned their credits and they get a high school diploma and they take it, they are done. There's no coming back. And that does happen. That happened about a week after I came on, a student did that. I had nothing to do with that one, Kurt. Nothing. I just happened to be answering the phone that day. It's like, okay, I'm gonna talk to Mrs. Shackner and I'll get back to you on this one, because I know no history. But that's what we're looking at. And, you know, the kids that we're dealing with right now, when I first started this work, the kids that went out were these really highly complex, intellectually disabled, on the spectrum, multi-disabled kids, nursing care. Now, when you look at the bulk of kids who are going out, it's mental health and behavior. And it's complex mental health and behavior. It's also trauma. And I think we have a really nice size of mental health staff working in Winchester between what we have at Hinsdale and Pearson and Gilbert. But I don't have what a therapeutic placement has, where they can say, I have 5 social workers for 100 kids, or 120 kids. I don't have that ratio. And a lot of the kids that we're sending out for that type of support need that type of support. So that's a very long answer to your question.
No, it's not.
But I hope it shed light on why we're paying the money that we're paying for these students to be educated.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank
Wow.
you.
Just in closing, I mean, at some point,
Point of information?
Yeah.
So we did have 3 vans in the district to transport special education kids. Getting drivers was a nightmare. But they were very, it was a revolving door. And the consistency was a great issue there. And there was also a great concern about the liability of transporting those kids. And so the decision was made probably 7, 8 years ago to dispense with that. So that's why we don't have vans.
Okay.
The vans were in bad shape too. We needed to constantly maintain them and we didn't have the money to maintain.
Oh, yes, oh, yes.
Yeah.
Clean them, maintain them.
Yep.
well,
Okay.
just, the state needs to take over the special ed costs and take it away from the towns, because it just,
That would be lovely. Yeah, yes. Make the,
Highly unlikely, sorry.
propose
No,
the
well-
legislation, I will vote. Yes,
yeah,
yes, yes.
absolutely, it needs to happen.
Speak to our
because-
state reps.
Yeah, highly unlikely, no, well,
So let's literally turn the page, and we're gonna just pop down, I'm gonna skip over the tuition lines, because I did put a sheet for you where I've just pulled all those together. So anything that says tuition, there's a page at the end, but, the next line that I have here, there's nothing for postage because it's in town support, there's nothing for communications because it's in town support. Advertising, we have $2,000 in the budget, significantly reduced from, in the past when it was harder to get job postings out there in the world. We now make use of our district application AppleTrack, which does send our postings out, I believe, to Indeed and other job boards. So we have 1,000 set aside for, advertising probably doesn't quite capture the way to think of that, but district promotion. At some point, I would like to revisit, there was a beautiful brochure, but it's several years outdated, like We Are the Winchester Public Schools. When we have something new like that, we'll print it, but also this would be reminders that need to go home by way of like a postcard designed in a Vistaprint or a Canva or something. And then the other thing, based on our struggles with staffing, we intend to go to college career fairs at WestCon, Central Connecticut. I think there's one other to line up teachers right out of school to fill, especially special education vacancies, as well as, you know, all the other areas that are hard to fill. But, so to go to those career fairs, I've done some of that. You need a little bit of stuff. You need a little bit of swag, you know. You need a little bit of stuff. You got to put candy on the table because you're there with all the other districts competing for good people. So that's, in the size of our budget, I consider a very modest amount to try to make us look fabulous in the eyes of prospective employees, which when I was doing listening sessions with teachers, one of the two prevalent themes was not having substitutes or having vacant positions is what's hurting us most as teachers, as paras, as people working with kids. So I take that as sort of one of my marching orders from the staff is go find us humans. So thus the modest but important budget to try and find people. Let's see, so advertising next, again, all those tuitions will pop up at the end. Travel really is a placeholder amount for contractual obligations. If we're sending folks to a conference or something, or people are presenting somewhere, or we've sent them to a training, if they're participating in like a regional meeting, we have our coaches go to regional meetings, like for updates with reading or math or things like that. That's to cover whatever expenses, again, only if it's something we're asking them to do, and they have to get pre-approval, so, but that's there so that, you know, we're paying back mileage at the IRS rate. We're not buying people meals, honestly, I mean, that, it doesn't happen. We're not sending people for, you know, 3-day jaunts or anything, but for the most part, it is like people going to meetings at the Resks and things. Where am I? Travel, 590, other purchase services. This budget line is $16,000, and this is hand in hand with the earlier line of transportation.
Yep.
These are the trips. They're White Memorial, they're, which, is it the Warner that the little people want to go to?
Yes.
It is the Warner, right? Connecticut, right. Some of these will, field trips also, field experiences does also cover in-house field trips, like when the people with the buckets full of snakes come to the school and stuff like that. Yeah, I make a point to miss that one, personally. I'm not a snakes girl, at all. Snakes. Not even a little bit. So that is, where am I? Other purchase services. Okay, so 611, this is the supply line for instructional supplies, and we break out, for obvious reasons, instructional and non-instructional. Sometimes there's gray area, right, like paper goes both ways, but largely the point of instructional supplies is either they're in kids' hands or they're in teachers' hands for use to provide instruction to kids. So the biggest piece of this is our math program has consumable workbooks. You know, I'd love to say to you, no big deal, we'll just photocopy or whatever, but obviously that's a copyright infringement, and then we would have a copy paper bill and we'd run out of ink in the copiers. So I don't know that there's a way to mitigate that.
So, Julia, I just want to, so pretty much the instructional supplies page is pretty much just supplies for each room, right, which is obvious. But I want to ask a question about the art.
Sure.
The art budget for Hinsdale gets $2,500 for all of the students in that classroom? And same with Pearson?
So let me say to you that this is like best approximations, and it's not that I'm gonna go back to that teacher and say, you can spend up to 2,500, but art supplies obviously are far more consumable. You know, like you'll use glue sticks in the classroom, but you're using them all day, every day in the art room. So they go through a lot more stuff. I'm just gonna look for.
Right, no, my question really is, that's all they get.
Oh, yeah, that's all they get.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Sandra.
That's kind of my question.
There is no
Okay.
other,
So 2,500 for the entire year for Hinsdale, 2,500 for the entire year of art supplies for Pearson.
that's the plan.
Okay.
And as I pointed out to you in the title grants, there is 20,000
Oh,
for
that's what I was gonna
supplies.
ask.
So, you know,
So
if
they're
that
also-
won't cut it for art, then that's where the,
So each school will then get another 10,000 for the arts
so 10,000.
in grants? No, I
Oh,
just,
yes, so in the title grant, that's Title II, has to be instructional supplies. So, for example, we might pay for the math workbooks out of that Title II line
so
because
out of
that's
that
an allowable expense.
19,000.
Title I, you mean? You mean
Title I is it? Yeah,
Title
right,
I.
Title II is the
Okay,
PD, I'm sorry.
So the supplies of 20,000,
And we'll
that
use
can
the
then
Title I
supplement?
And we'll
Right.
use the Title I money first.
Okay,
Because if we don't use it, we lose it.
okay.
So we don't leave money on the
So
table.
that
Ever.
Title I, then, when we say supplies, I just want to understand, that can go to the art department, that can go to the PE department, that can go to the library, that can go to supplement the budgeted,
Yes,
right? But we want to spend that money first.
always.
Okay, so when I'm looking at the art budget, they're not just getting 2,500 to teach art all year to a lot of kids.
If they need more, they would get more.
And they, I mean,
Okay.
and they have some supplies left over, of
Sure.
course, you know, so it's
Yeah.
a matter of just
Okay.
filling in.
All right,
And
so
again,
we
these
have
are
the
kind of
20
like averaged out, if you will. You know, I do have, I was trying to find quickly for you, like a list, the teachers have given us, like, I mean, I have the worksheet that actually has the glue sticks at 49 cents a piece and whatever.
Yeah.
But the reality is,
Right, so then is that 20,000, is that shared with also the classroom teachers?
Yes.
Okay, so they can also, I mean, it's not a lot of money, but they can dip into that also. All right. So really, perhaps we have like 77,000, right? 57 plus the 20? Okay, good, thank you.
let's see.
Where are we?
Up next is
Up
the
next.
612 line, which is instructional software and licenses. And I'll just point out the distinction being, we have lots of system software, if you will. The application system, the Power School, which is our student information, they're on a separate sheet. This is specifically things either used to teach kids from, like the teacher's on it, or the kids are on it directly. So iReady is the biggest piece of this, of course, and we use that both for assessment as well as a pathway for instruction. In that price is the assessment module and the personalized instruction for reading and math. And we pay by site, so the bill that they give us, or the estimate that they give us, is broken out like a cost for Hinsdale, a cost for Pearson. I will be asking them to price it out for me. The thing of it is, like, the site license often ends up cheaper. So let's say if we meet as a crew and we say, you know what, we don't want the kindergartners doing the pathway, we'll just do the assessment or something. I'm not sure it's really gonna bring the price down, because then they're gonna say, well, then you're paying for this number in this grade and this number in that grade. But we will price it both ways in case there's any savings to be had, should we reach a point where we say we don't wanna use it at any particular grade or something.
Did we also talk about the possibility of seeing if Gilbert wants to do that with the 7th and 8th graders? Was that a discussion that I remember?
We talked about
Yeah,
that, but if
already?
it didn't cost us any more money, if it
Right.
did, then we wouldn't talk about it.
Good kind of cost sharing with Gilbert, like for, if it's less for the licenses,
Well, it's by
get
site.
more.
By site, yeah.
It's by site, though. So the
Oh,
other thing I could
okay,
look at,
never
though,
mind.
is I could reach out to Lisa, the salesperson, and ask, if they were to, what would a district license cost if they treated the 3 schools as a district?
We would have to
Largely, it's
check
based on
with-
your number of
Check
kids.
to see if they would be interested first, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
I mean, that's a
that would be
curricular question, too.
Right,
Yep.
right.
Did the PD that iReady did, is that part of it?
So in our existing contract with iReady, there were, I think, 2 remaining PD days included with
Okay.
our original purchase. This estimate, they put a PD day in there because they would obviously recommend that you continue to grow your skills in using it. I actually have pulled that out at this point just because we don't have a PD line. So our current estimate with them is just for the student licenses, the student use. If there's a need, then that 19,000 of professional development money in the Title II line, that would be the kind of thing we would book a day with them for. Those are typically, I think, like $2,000 to $3,000. So the one we just did, we had already purchased. Amplify goes with our DIBELS, our early literacy assessment. Gizmos is a STEM piece. Second Step is our SEL lessons. That's more a teacher access to the instructional materials that they then turn around and turnkey with kids. And NCS Pearson is an assessment piece that we use with some students.
Okay.
Let's see. Next, we have $2,000 for nurse supplies. It's pretty self-explanatory. Next up after that, 630 is a blank line, so nothing. Supplies for technology. So these are the things, the little things in technology, right? Not like the big expensive things, but replacement mice, power cords, keyboards, headphones, the cases for the Chromebooks, the incidentals that keep our devices functional. And again, a little bit of an estimate, but a modest one. I mean,
How old are the devices? Like, would you say, could you give me
How old is what?
the devices that, like, the students are using? The
Chromebooks.
The Chromebooks that we have are, they need to start being replaced, which we'll get to farther along here.
Okay.
But we also have to get licenses every year for them, and they have to update them, and they have updated the software in them to take us, for some of them, into 2030, if the little devices actually last that long, because the kids are a little tough on them. They like to pry the keys off and do all sorts of clever things. So,
Or not. What if we just didn't give Chromebooks to kids anymore? What does that look like? I used to thinking about it like, oh, I wouldn't want to be the only district that doesn't, have technology, because that's very prevalent, in the future. But I don't think we're teaching kids anything in technology. They know more than, you couldn't find a 5-year-old that knows, less about technology than anyone here. I know that, so.
so at a minimum, we need the devices in school for things like the SBAC and the iReady. Like, we use them, and we do send the iReady as their homework.
Yeah.
So if we don't provide devices to kids, we would be making the bold assumption that every child had access to something bigger than a cell phone at home. I don't think you can do iReady on a cell phone. They would need a desktop or a device.
Or we'd be switching off of that platform altogether. We wouldn't be doing iReady. Just back to
Right.
paper,
Well, iReady is differentiated for each kid, and it activates and gives kids specific
Yeah, I
instructional
understand.
programs.
I understand how it works, but I just.
I think just the data that it collects too, is just like really important to be able to get the data for the teachers, It's hard to be able to collect data. We've just gotten so accustomed, I guess, to technology. I mean, it's
How'd we used to
interesting
do it, Renee?
thought.
Well, just I mean,
Yeah, I don't
I-
know.
I-
Yeah.
How'd we do
I'm
it
just
back in the
saying,
day?
it could be a cost savings, or definitely would be, and also the kids are on the phones all the time, anyway. You know, maybe we just don't put them on them ourselves. Maybe we just say, you know what, just,
What grades you see the
What?
Chromebooks?
All of them.
All of
All.
them, right?
First graders, what would a first grader use a Chromebook for?
So first graders do use Chromebooks for iReady.
Amplify,
I'm sorry?
amplify.
Yep, that's some of our CKLA. So we do use it, we don't overuse it though, particularly at the younger grades. So we don't use it with our pre-K, our kindergartners have limited use. Our first graders certainly use it a little bit more. Our second graders do use it quite a bit.
who's taking them home? Who's taking these home for homework or whatever? Nobody. So they do, if they have the iReady, they're doing it.
To be issued a computer, they had to purchase insurance. So the
Right, I remember
district
that's,
said
yeah.
parents agreed to pay a $30 fee for the insurance or allotted a computer to take home.
So if they're doing their iReady, that's a set time in school.
And they can do it at home, they can access their own computer.
Okay.
And I think I hear you saying some kids do take the device home because they've bought the insurance in there.
They have a separate
Oh.
device at home, so it's not homeschool.
Okay,
But then do we,
That might be 30 kids.
okay.
and do we have still a Chromebook for every student? We do. So,
I'm gonna guess that some of the ones that are in use have probably been in use for half dozen years.
Yes, so what's happened is that the Chromebooks that we had that could go home with students, we don't have that many anymore. So when we were going through the program this year for students to be able to purchase the insurance to take the Chromebooks home, there was a lot of nail biting of, are we gonna have enough available for those kids? So thankfully, it was a small group that took them, to take them home, because next year, I don't know that we'll be able to have that program.
Were those original Chromebooks, was that bought during COVID? Where
That
each
was
child got
bought
a
during
Chromebook?
The
ARPA money?
Commissioner Network
Okay.
period, where they were trying to, they put in money into the district to bring us up to speed, and then we're supposed to walk on our own after we're, brought up to speed. So,
What did we do before that?
the kids didn't all have Chromebooks.
And so how were we teaching, basically? If we're using SBACs with how long ago was that? I'm just curious.
Well, it was, Commissioner Network money came with the receivership.
2015.
So that was in 2016, summer of 2016.
So
Uh,
18
You had the
years
computer
ago.
lab, right?
Yeah.
Went in the computer lab, and you had computer time, you had half hour class or whatever.
Yeah,
Is that a significant cost savings?
To have a technology class, but then they're not in the classroom with the subject being taught. It's a very separate situation. I'm not an educator, so.
Right.
I was just gonna say,
defer.
so this is a sort of like Venn diagram conversation a little bit, because
Right.
clearly there's a financial element to it, and there's also really an educational philosophy piece of it. And I would suggest that probably, unless we absolutely can't afford to maintain a Chromebook program, we should make the sort of educational judicious decisions around, and I know we have on our schedule to talk about, how do we feel about the use of the computers? Are we happy with the utilization that we have? Do we want to see more or less? Less. So I don't think sitting here right now, we could just say, yeah, let's
Right.
get rid of
Right,
Chromebooks.
right,
But
right.
I appreciate the question, because we are talking about judicious use and what makes sense. And I know we've talked a little bit about, and I share your opinion that I don't want 5-year-olds sitting all day in front of a computer. That's not a good use of kids' time. So, and I don't think that they are
No,
either.
sure. But, yeah, and just to get to your point, right? Is
Right.
that Chromebooks were given to every student, and understanding education and developmental needs of children. And as you and I have discussed, right, the necessity and importance of hand to paper to brain, the little guys, right? So I'm glad you're having that conversation.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a necessary one, because I think it's very easy to rely on computers, but the little people, right? At Barb's age, they obviously need to start really using them. But at our little guy's age, they need to be paper in hand.
All right, so maybe we table this for now, this
Yeah.
discussion, but that's something I'm interested in,
Yeah.
is there a significant cost savings if we can kind of move away from such a technology? If it's, what do we think about it? I would like to just hear both sides, you know?
The other thing I'll explore too, on the cost-saving side of it, it doesn't really hit the philosophical side as much, or the educational side, is leasing. You know, is there any benefit to us to leasing devices? I think Gilbert does a lease.
Yes.
That's actually what I was gonna say. Last night, they did mention the possibility of taking a look at that and seeing whether we can do some sort of cost.
Because if something
Savings
breaks,
around
they'll replace it.
Right.
As
That
part of the
with
lease.
And you're
Gilbert.
probably going to get newer.
Yes,
Although they
it's-
have like
the-
60,000 in their budget for it, like, the cost of leasing them is a lot. You know, so so it's one of those, like, how do you want to spend your money? Because if you buy them, it's cheaper,
Right.
right? No, it shouldn't be that way, but yes, but then
Right.
they have a shelf
But then,
life.
and then you have to fix them, and then, right, and then you have old equipment.
Right,
Whereas these
so-
are rotated
Right,
every
and high schoolers,
years.
right, and high schoolers are gonna use them all the time, right?
Right.
But have we ever looked into, I mean, I know Apple at a certain point was offering to districts, you know, here, have our computers. Have we explored other things other than Chromebooks? And
So I
purchasing
can't say
them?
historically what we've explored, but I know Apple has sort of moved away a bit from the educational market. Just the other day, Joe
Shame
said to me,
on
because I
them.
love my MacBook, and he said, I know, it's such a
I like a
shame,
free
they won't,
computer.
I don't know the term for this, but,
Yeah.
like, we manage all of the devices remotely, like, we set where they can go to. You can't do that on Macs, apparently. So knowing that, it feels like Apple has walked away from interest in student devices and in-school work. But I'll absolutely take a quick peek and see if there's
Yeah,
anything
but
out
if
there.
we can't. And the other thing is, for the younger, if it's necessary for SBAC and stuff, right?
Or you
I
would,
mean, I have
or
my
you,
iPad,
have a
but what-
computer time, you switch, you know?
No, but for testing, like if they're using.
The whole school
but
doesn't need to take a
what
test
about
at the same time.
tablets rather than?
But what, and also what about the smart boards? Do we have one in every room? Do we need one in every room? Can we have one in the science
I don't
room?
know, I kind of like
You know?
a smart board tour.
So remember that at our level, there isn't like a science room really. I mean, Hinsdale does actually have a science lab room, but most science takes place
Every
in,
room- in
in the
every
regular
room.
classroom.
Right.
And the smart boards, I don't know if I didn't teach with one, they didn't have them while I was teaching, but they are phenomenal in terms
They're
of
fun,
being a tool. They're fun, they're great with the little ones in terms of like, you've just spent like 45 minutes on an intense reading time, and so we're gonna do a brain break, and you put on the thing, and the little people dance, and it has,
Something to
but
say
more
about
importantly, it
brain
has
breaks.
the ability when you're doing something in math and you're trying to show kids like a three-dimensional, like the way the equation of a line becomes three-dimensional, or it becomes a curve, like, you can illustrate things in different ways. Whatever paper you're working on, our math program, our language arts program, are all built to come through the smart boards, so the teachers are able to pull up the teaching materials on there, and it's interactive, and I'm reading the words with my first graders, and I'm touching them, and they're lighting up, and it is a really valuable tool. So we do have them in all of the regular classrooms.
It's not in the budget.
I think we have replacement of 2 or 4, I've lost track because we've changed it a few times, 2. Because again, we have them in, what do we have roughly, like 4 times 7, we have about between 25 and 30 general ed classrooms. And those smart boards are,
Used a lot.
they're going to need to be replaced, so that's kind of like your, like if you budget for 2 every year, you don't end up with a cliff for it, because they do eventually conk out.
Oh, there they are, the next page, okay.
Yeah, we're about to hit that, I think.
All right.
But I appreciate the questions about the use, and I was thinking that at a future curriculum committee meeting, maybe where are we, the middle of February, so maybe like at the end of March or something, maybe we can put that on an agenda to talk a little bit more about. March curriculum. Okay, so that was supplies, technology, was that supplies, technology? Is that where we left off? Okay, sorry, supplies, technology. So supplies, so unlike the earlier one, these are, I mean, everything we do is to support students and their learning, but these are less directly connected. They're not the glue sticks in the kids' hands. So this is your copy paper to keep the building afloat. We have walkie-talkies that we use extensively in the building. The administrators carry them, the behavior techs carry them. When teachers are on the playground, they're carrying one, the nurse has one. And like everything else, they break, they die. So that is, again, with the thought that if you replace 2 a year, you hopefully stay in front of it. Obviously, we don't replace them if they're all working, but they tend to never all be working. Student recognition, a very modest amount in order for us to be able to do incentive things for superstar students. A lot of that we do through grant. We have a wonderful, it's not called the Wiggly Worm, but the box in the lobby at Pearson where students who are being recognized for being model students get to come down and take a book out of a machine. They get a special coin. I'm close. It is called something like a Wiggly Worm, right? That one. So little things like that. Both schools do a great job recognizing students for doing right, which is really important to school climate. And with our school climate initiatives, that becomes even more critical. That's something, if anything, I would love to have more money in the budget for supporting our school climate initiatives and developing positive behavior systems for kids where there's just a little bit more hype around caught being good.
Well, that's something we could go to the community for, is it not?
Absolutely.
For what?
For like a fundraiser for something like that, we could go to the community.
And those are the kinds of things that our PTO supports.
Like the
actually.
book machine, wasn't that like given to us or something like that?
That came through a grant,
Grant.
Jenny
the grant.
Leach, right?
Victoria McDonald actually worked with Melanie to get a grant for that machine, and the PTO does donate it.
Right.
And then finally, just office supplies of all the different things it takes to run a business, if you will. File folders and the like. And, equipment, non-instructional, this is all the stuff that breaks, that aren't things like the size of a boiler and a water heater. And that line, 731, you'll see 14,000, 11,000 were the amounts spent in the last 2 completed years. We have 6,000 in the budget this year. Nancy, can I venture to say we've blown that out already, or, no?
Not yet.
Great. Great, because we only budgeted the same, roughly 6,000 for this coming year. But, the lawnmower, that was my first week here, right? There was screws falling off and Dave had to go and reattach. I mean, our equipment that we use, like, we do all of our own snow blowing, weed whacking, all of our maintenance. We don't have like a maintenance crew that comes in or anything. So our equipment is not new and shiny. But we have people who are really good with bubble gum and Band-Aids and put it back together. Let's see. 690, 730, 734. But I'm missing 731. Oh, no, we just did 731. I lied. Phew. I'm so determined that there won't be mistakes.
Can I ask a question about the snow plowing? Does like the town garage, do they like do, like come down through Hinsdale and do that whole, like, through the main lot and stuff? So like, are we just doing like the
So
sidewalks? Like, what are we doing?
the town plows the roads, which ironically, to your point, Hinsdale's main driveway is actually a road. So they take a pass through there.
Okay.
We have a contract that we put out to bid for snow plowing at the 2 schools to clear the parking lots. And then our custodial and maintenance crew with snow blower and shovels, clears all of the sidewalks and walkways and all the things to make access to the building safe. The snowplow folks put down sand and salt, the custodians and maintenance put down sand and salt in the walkways, so it's a combo pack, a little bit of everybody.
I was just wondering if it would be possible to kind of maybe see if the town can kind of do the
Parking lot?
parking lots.
If they have the capacity, it would make sense because it would just save the town money, but I assume, and I should never assume, that if they had the capacity, they would have suggested it at some point, but I will ask that question.
Actually, the question was asked, and they don't have the capacity to ensure that the schools would be cleared in time to open for school.
So I think we
Because
asked
there's so
that a
many
couple of years
miles
ago.
of roads for them to cover.
Okay.
Can we ask again, though?
Sure. Never hurts to ask the question. Absolutely. I do know the other day, for example, everybody but us, God bless you, had a 2-hour delay, and I had to go 3. Phil was homesick, Mark, the foreman, was running the crew, and when I spoke to him, he's like, there's no way we can get every road ready by 2 hours. He's like, you give me 3, we'll get it done, people will be safe. But, so with absolutely no knowledge of how many people are out there clearing roads, I suspect we're a little stretched if every other town was opening in 2 hours and, snow plowing, town plowing.
And then what kind of savings would that be?
We wouldn't have to have a plow, would be the big savings. Or a truck, right?
Unless it ended, so the only thing, so we would probably need a truck either way, right? We have a sander on the back of a pickup truck, but it's also the only it's the only vehicle we own, so we use it for moving furniture between buildings, we use it when we need to take the snow blower or the lawnmower for service.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
I was totally making that up, but I was
No,
right.
No, you're absolutely right.
Um,
Absolutely right, yeah.
I'm looking at Nancy like, stop me if I'm wrong. So we have just the one aging pickup truck that I think would be the minimum that we need is one
Right.
vehicle, regardless of the plowing, because that truck doesn't actually plow anything, it just.
Oh, it does.
Oh, does it plow too?
Plow- Plows the driveway, the parking lots.
No.
Our 2012 pickup truck does still have a plow and does do some plowing to neat up, because the town blows through, and, you know, and it all goes up on the sidewalks, and it's all piled up high, so if he can come through and mitigate it, and then the custodians can come through and really clean it up, so it's passable. I mean, it's,
But that's not doing our parking lots, that is a bid.
yeah, it's not, it'd be too much for it.
Let's see, so we're down to 734. So this is like the bigger technology as compared to mice and keyboards and the little pieces. This is replacing 2 smart boards, which again, my recommendation would be that we just make it a practice that we plan on 2 a year so that we're not all of a sudden in 1 year saying 7 broke during the school year and now what do we do? The Chromebooks, and I will continue to look for other ways to do that. Typical is to replace 1 grade level a year so that you're sort of cycling them out by the time they're aging out of their usefulness. I think Chromebooks are somewhere around the 5th or 6th year. They're like dated technology. So if we did 1 grade level a year, we'd be, you know, we only have 7 grades, so we'd be doing a decent job with that. However, again, being mindful of the fact that I knew nobody was gonna be smiling at me with this budget presentation, I did not put in a whole grade level. I cut it in half and said, at least let's start with something, because I know last year it was in the budget and came out. So we have 40 Chromebooks in there, 4 replacement monitors, 5 replacement laptops, and 4 printers. We have printers scattered around the school for teacher use. This is the companion to our earlier conversation. There's instructional technology, and then there's what it takes to, you know, run the business, if you will. So these are our software that run behind the scenes. I'm happy to answer to the extent that I can. Largely, eFinance is our entire financial program. PowerSchool is what all of the student information is in. GoGuardian is what allows us to monitor student use on the Chromebooks. CrowdStrike is about making us less hackable. You carry licenses to keep the Chromebooks functioning. ASOP is how we track adult attendance. E-rate online is,
It's the Medicaid.
oh,
Or
okay.
not, excuse me, not Medicaid. It's something, it's a charge that's on your telephone bill every single month, that then those dollars go to education to help offset the communication costs in education. And so there is a fee that we pay, E-rate,
To get
to be
money.
able to access those funds
Yeah.
that help defray our communication costs.
We have to pay to get the funds.
Yeah, well, that was the same with the Medicaid.
Huh.
When Nancy said to me it cost $5,000 for the relay, I was like,
Oh my
wait, but,
God.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of skipping
Talk
down
about a
because
racket.
reading the room. School Messenger is how we get information out to the families. It connects with PowerSchool. Pick a Time is how we do our parents'
Yep.
conferences.
Yeah, I mean, this is all pretty self-explanatory. I think.
You did discuss with Greg about PowerSchool, and
Yes, we talked about we can reach out to both PowerSchool and Frontline are two of the big products that we use and see if, so I think we're gonna reach out and see what we can find
Okay.
out. And I think Nancy was initiating, we were gonna reach out to Ed Advance to see if there was any savings to be had since we are both using Ed Advance for our food management, running our kitchens or whatever you say for that.
okay.
I don't see Frontline on here. Do you still, Frontline?
Oh,
is
and the
still-
dues and fees page was missing from mine for some reason.
Apple
I don't know.
Tracks?
What?
Apple Tracks is Frontline.
I thought the ASOP, yeah.
They both
too,
live in
right?
Frontline.
And then, I don't know, do you guys still do T-Val through there or no? Or did you ever do, no, the teacher T-Val, no, okay. It's Torrington, I guess.
You do Google Doc.
And then the very last page is dues and fees, and those are, again, all listed out for you and pretty self-explanatory, but they're the major organizations, Concases, Special Education. Nora, can I be gone with you? For some reason,
Sure.
my pile lost that page. CASBO is the Business Association. I don't understand why we have to pay to be a part of Ed Advance, but we do. CAPS is superintendents, Connecticut, school administrators, National Association of Elementary School Principals, CRA is the Connecticut Reading Association. So again, pretty self-explanatory.
Pretty okay. Questions?
So at this point, yes, I would happily entertain any questions that you have. The one budget adjustment since the budget was presented is that the Gilbert budget final number was less than the number that Greg had given me as a placeholder. So the result of that changes the increase over last year is $1,737,889, and the resulting percent is 7.74%. Give or take a rounding error on my part. Nancy will give that to you fancy on Monday, but just to give you a sense of, so it brought it down 0.25%. And at this point, I think we have been through probably every aspect of the budget. I welcome questions on anything we've already talked about, anything that we didn't talk about. And then I would look to you for your sort of guidance on what, if you feel prepared, if you feel like you would support the budget now, seeing what's in it as is, that's one thing. And if you feel like it needs to change in some way, I would look to you for some direction on what it is you're looking for so that I can be responsive to that and bring you whatever information you're looking for.
Could we go to that tuition page, which is the actual last page,
Oh,
56564?
Sorry, yes, I just have to look on with you.
I just want to make sure the math is right. The Gilbert line tuition was 8,932,559. So that's been adjusted as of last night?
Right, but not
To-
changed in our budget yet.
Right, right. So it's actually $56,000 less?
Right.
From that number?
But what's
So
the
it's-
new number? 8 million?
Is it, if I did the math right,
Minus 56,000.
56,511?
What is it?
So that should be $8,876,048. Is that what you guys have?
I'm just trying to think where I can look to see where I've written that down. That does sound right.
From last night?
I didn't bring my
Did you
Gilbert
just
stuff with
subtract
me,
this from that?
so-
Yeah, that's why I want to check myself.
Greg sent it to me as just the minus number, so
Minus
I didn't work it
56,500.
back up the other way.
Okay,
Hold, please.
56,511.
So, somebody with better eyes than me,
have,
8932.
Who sends us the Gilbert packet? Who's that person? I can search it in my email.
The Gilbert packet comes from Marianne Schaefer. 8. You got it.
It was more than 8 mil, the total budget you're talking about?
For Gilbert, as of last night's
Yeah, I
vote?
was just looking.
It was it was 9 million something.
Keeping in
Yeah,
mind
that's-
that we pay a
That was
person.
the total before all the
Before the
yeah, the
capital.
deductions,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I think our piece of it should be $8,876,048.
Can you confirm that with them?
I can confirm it while we're
wouldn't
here, I'm sure I have
Okay.
it.
Is it on their website? Did they update it? Do you think?
As of this morning, the website had the version of the budget that Greg had previously presented.
Right.
Not last night.
Let me just think about it, I probably have it in an email
66.
from Greg.
Where's my stuff?
Um,
It's over here. Okay.
I should have brought them.
Oh, 8876,048, yes, confirming.
Okay.
Yep. So that is the tuition number for us.
8, 8, 7,
Thank you.
048. Okay, thank you.
Julie,
Go ahead.
Wait, I have a couple of questions. And so Julie, on the revenue summary page, under budget overview,
Let me catch up with you, give me 1 second.
Yep.
In budget overview, in the revenue.
summary page,
Summaries.
3, 4 pages in, 5 pages in. I just want to make sure I understand.
Revenue summary.
Yep,
Okay.
so from
Yep.
the federal government, we had 1.8 in 23, 24. Then it dropped to 837, now we're at 823. Was that the ARPA money that we received? And that's the drop? Yeah, that's the ARPA, okay.
It's a perfect storm of beautiful for me
Uh,
arriving.
Please.
And is
that's
that
what we
a
want.
guesstimate, that number from the federal government, or is that, we have that now?
Which one? Do you, the budget for the current year?
Yes.
That's, the document that we went over earlier, that has all the grants listed out on it.
Right.
The assumptions.
That's
It will
assumptions.
Look at the same amount, not less.
This one.
Yes.
But that's an assumption,
Yes, it's a budget.
yeah.
You have to make
So-
some assumptions.
Nancy, am I right in thinking in the page that Sandra referenced, when it says the budget for 24-25, we were assuming 837 in our federal grants. Now,
Yes.
since we're assuming 823 in the coming year, does that mean that we received 823 in the current year because that's what we're basing next year's assumptions on? Does that follow?
Yes.
Okay, so we actually ended up with 14,000 less than we anticipated getting.
Right.
Okay, did that make sense?
It went down.
Yes.
Okay.
So whatever you see in the furthest right column will always be what we actually received for the year that we're living in.
Right. Okay. My next question is the state revenue of 1.4 to the BOE. Is this a guaranteed amount? Did we cover that?
Again, it's the assumption.
That's the
that-
assumption.
that are
Okay,
on
that's what I
that
wanted to
sheet
ask.
with the breakouts, yes.
Okay. And then.
And that's based on, the grants that we have received this year, so some of them did go up in comparison to
Yep.
previous year.
The status quo page versus proposed, what does that mean?
What does that mean? That means, it's been a minute. So what that means
Second.
is to do everything we're doing now
Is the status
without
quo
the
page.
4 new positions, the
Okay.
kindergarten teacher, the BCBA, the safety officers, and the cafeteria monitors.
Yep.
But this is an error, and I apologize. The bottom numbers there are incorrect. It should be 6.99%. What happened is we tinkered with something like in the last day, and I grabbed that number off of an older draft of the numbers we were bringing you. So in concept, this is correct, but the bottom numbers for the status quo budget are incorrect. It would be 6.99%. It probably does not stand to reason that it would be 6.74% because it's a smaller number. The impact would look different at the Gilbert thing, but
Right.
but it is roughly 6.99 to just do what we're doing now versus 7.99, which has those positions.
Is this number the same, though? And this number? Or these changed too?
The total appropriated.
The total appropriated is correct.
Okay, just the percent is off.
Yeah, that's all I had for now.
Having gone through the whole budget today and the other time, what did we have planned for Monday's meeting, budget meeting?
So, obviously, we scheduled them to make sure we had ample time. What remains at this point is doing whatever it takes for you to feel ready to vote on a budget. So if you have questions or what-if scenarios you want to ask me, we can get information and bring it back Monday. This was listed tonight as an action item, so if the board feels compelled, if somebody wishes to make a motion to approve the budget at whatever amount you want it to be, whether you want to approve the superintendent's proposed budget less and we can tell you the numbers to make a motion. There is nothing stopping you from motioning to approve a budget this evening. That's at the will of the board at this point. I don't have anything new to bring to you. I have nothing saved up for another meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Now it's just your time to,
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there a motion? Or are we going to move to item B, which is new to the agenda?
To accept?
I would like to, if we wouldn't mind, we just got this today, didn't we?
Yeah.
I would like to spend a day with this.
You're
Or two.
asking for a motion to accept this?
Well, I'm
budget?
just entertaining that idea, because we're reviewing questions, answers, deliberation. It does have a chance to
Okay. So then-
act if you want to.
So then I have a question. Has anybody, looking at this budget, has anybody compared it to what the mill rate will be?
I can speak to that a little bit, I meet with Paul regularly.
Yep.
We can't answer that because we are just a piece of the town budget.
Yep.
So when I met with Paul today, he was indicating he is aware of our budget, understands the scenario of what flexibility there is in it. And he is talking about ways to mitigate on the town side to keep the mill rate, what did he exactly say to me? I don't want to misquote him, but he is very aware of the need to keep the mill rate at a point that it will pass. And he was not saying to me, you need to slash your budget. He was saying the combination of where he is with the revenue and what he can do on the town side. And once I have your number, we'll put it all together. And so he can only manage that mill rate piece because we're only a piece of the puzzle. We, just like
Right,
Gilbert became
but
a line
we're-
in ours,
we're a pretty
we
big
become a
piece.
line in his,
We're a
right?
pretty big piece of that puzzle.
Yep, about half, I
So-
think.
Right, so, you know, I'm not ready to accept this budget because from conversations and that we've had and an understanding of what the mill rate will increase with this budget, and knowing what we went through last year with not even a 1% increase, that it went 3 times to referendum, I think we're gonna have to look a little more closely and have more conversations regarding this budget. I don't think it's ready to submit yet to the selectmen.
Our date for that is by or before March 15th, is that right? Yeah, okay. Any other discussion?
I would ask, given that, so that I can be helpful in the process, whether you have questions now or want to send them to me, or if you can point me in a direction of what you would want to see happen, what would you want us to stop doing that we're doing now, so that I can bring back to you information to help you make decisions, I'd be happy to do that.
Well, this is only my 4th year, but having been through 3 budgets, right? Usually we're presented the budget. Seems to be in years past. And then we have a non-negotiables and the negotiables, right? Because we have to be ready. And last year, what was our original budget that we started with, Nance?
It was originally,
That's the first page under appendices.
it was 22,823,
Yep.
and we wound up at 22,449.
And so that meant we cut like,
370.
370.
right.
But how much of that was meaningful? And like we had talked about the example about the lawyer fees or whatever, legal fees. I don't want to be, that's not what I'm interested in doing. If we're going to cut anything, let's make it meaningful. I don't want to scratch and then re-put it on, like take away our lawyer fees and use them all again, like we did in the past. That doesn't help. That's what we seemed to do to get it to pass last time. Am I correct? You know?
Well, and the intent was because we didn't want to touch the people.
Right.
Because the people are the
Right.
magic.
The
Right.
people,
And
we cannot,
without them, it doesn't happen.
Right.
correct,
So that's the problem, because that is the majority of
the budget, correct.
And the reality is, it isn't like we have an overdraft protection. So if you cut the legal line and then spend it, you're not doing something else
Right.
that you plan to do. I wouldn't want you to think we're able to overspend the line, and that's okay. If you you see when Nancy brings the monthly reports, it's always gonna balance out, because she's saying, okay, well, we did this, so we can't do that.
Right.
Well, I mean, nobody ever wants to cut the school budget. We don't want to cut the school budget. But we also have to live in a reality that this has to be voted on, right? So I guess we're going to have to wait and see where the selectmen come down with their budget. And you're right, no people. We don't ever want to cut teachers, right? Because that's shooting yourself in the foot.
Underneath
But
the-
we also cannot, let me just finish this thought, just because
Yeah.
these are the hard words that nobody really wants to say or talk about. This town will not support a 4 to 7% increase in mill rate. They won't. And, we talked about that we don't want to have this become a battle. It would be nice to just present a budget and have it voted on the first time. I don't know if we can get there. I'm hoping we can get there. But
Maybe to your earlier question, so what Paul has explained to me is that $1 million increase is about a mill.
Right.
So our 1.7, 1.8 roughly
Right.
is, our piece is under 2 mills. And I think that it was Paul's goal to keep us under 2 mills, total. So I don't think he's thinking that we're coming in at 1.8 and he's gonna also be another, so that the mill rate is like 4 to 6 increase. I think he is aiming to keep it at a place where it will pass as well. He and I have pinky swore, we're passing on the first try.
Okay.
We're taking it on the road together. We are determined to activate parents. I've been doing, stop me, did I say this at the last meeting? I was doing parent focus groups around school climate. And in asking parents what kind of communication they appreciate, what catches their attention, when do they hear from us, I must have used as an example saying, well, you know, when it comes to getting information out about the budget, and I got a lot of feedback. I started sharing some examples, and someone said, I had no idea we needed, like, it was that kind of shape. I think I was saying to them, we have, you know, 1 secretary in each school, we have 1 maintenance guy, 2 custodians cleaning the buildings. There's not a lot there to scrape away from. And his eyes went wide, and he said, you know, like, I had no idea. How do we get involved? What do we need to do? Another parent said, yeah, I didn't even realize I needed to vote until the 3rd time. Last year was the first time I sort of noticed. So I take that as messaging that I have to think creatively about ways. I'm sure that there was outreach done last year. I would never suggest that there wasn't. But I need to do more different other ways of making sure parents are really aware of what's in our budget, what's not in our budget, and what cuts, that a failed budget would lead to cuts, and what the cuts would mean would have to go. So,
If you want to look at non-contractual, you know, you talked about, you mentioned what are negotiables, what are non-negotiables. She presented that on the page before budget detail, and that's 126,000. A little bit more than 0.5% the budget, so you can look at that. In terms of schedule, we have 1 date scheduled amongst us, 1 more Monday, and that's it. So if you wanted to, we can schedule more days after Monday, but I think we're gonna have to start moving into the position of making a decision.
if that also shifts us from our deliberations to our promotion of getting information out about it.
Right.
Because I wouldn't start going out with it until it's a board-approved budget.
Right.
And I don't, my understanding of our process, and I am the least familiar with it in the room, but my understanding is Paul can't complete his budget until he has our budget.
He
Like,
has to
that's how
have
he
ours.
calculates it all together. So we.
Has he calculated it with this number yet?
He has our number, so whatever work he's done so far, actually, when I came in, he had just turned off the TV. He had like a draft up there, but he found something wrong in it. So I know he is using what he has our budget book, and
He's still looking at the grand list, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, I think he may have just
That's a
come
moving
into his
target, too.
numbers for personal property versus
Right.
cars versus homes and all that. And although there was losses there, I think it may have been less than he was dreading.
So we have till the 15th of March, you said. So we can still have our next budget meeting as scheduled to
On
talk
Monday,
about go home and try to digest this second packet here, come back with questions, and then we could vote at our March regular meeting. That's a possible,
What's the date
that's
on that?
perfectly on track, right?
March regular meeting would be.
Doesn't-
11,
It's
I
the
think.
11th,
Yeah, it's right before.
and that's 3 days before the budget due to the
I
town.
mean, ideally,
We
you
want to
know,
get that
at
done before.
The workshop on Monday
We should.
should bring a vote.
That's ideal.
Yeah, I have the 4th.
What if-
Chris, you have to present, she has to present the budget to the Board of Selectmen,
On the 15th.
and their Board of Selectmen meeting, when is that?
The-
Is that the 4th?
I don't think she's been scheduled for which meeting they have her presenting at yet.
All right.
Because if they do, we don't know what to have it on our calendar.
Can we talk to Paul about when the vote is scheduled.
Which, the referendum?
The selectmen vote?
No, the referendum.
That's set at the
May.
town budget hearing.
Why?
By town charter. That's,
No, I'm asking Parker why he's
Just the
asking that
day of
question.
the week that they tend to put the vote on doesn't make sense.
That's up to the town meeting, isn't it?
Yeah.
and
They do
anyone,
vote on
to
it
my
at
understanding,
that
can
meeting.
make a suggestion for when that vote is. My understanding is it can't be, it must be 2 weeks past the date of
Yes.
the town meeting.
Yep.
How about a Tuesday instead of a Saturday?
So knowing that the town meeting this year is not a full 2 weeks prior to Memorial Day, I don't think we would be able to vote on the traditional Saturday Memorial Day, as I recall. I did talk to Paul about a worry that if we continue to put it off more and more weekends, we would be not having a budget in time to,
Which was terrible.
plan for the coming year. And I did do the research with Barb, and we do have a history and a practice in being able to vote in Pearson School on a school day without disrupting student learning. We would make use of the music room, the teachers would park on Fruit Street. So it is completely feasible, and you would be, at that town meeting, able to make that motion if that's what you wanted to see happen. Either the Tuesday after Memorial Day weekend, or even, Wednesday, give us a day to get in and be on our A game, but absolutely.
Besides timelines, one of the things that you'd brought up, Julie, is involvement. Just because we have done things a certain way in the past doesn't mean that we can't have new ideas towards it. And I like the openness to looking how to involve the community more, because last year's budget was the first budget that I was ever involved in. I lived in this town since I was a little kid, so moved away a couple times, but a good portion of my life has been spent in Winsted, and it was the first time I ever sat in a budget meeting. I am not alone in that, right? But it's the only time where I see a room filled with people talking about the budget when they hear the mill rate's gonna go up. And most of our meetings, maybe not tonight, but most of our meetings, the only time that I see people actually in is when it's budget related. So to me, one of the things, or food for thought for, I think, us as a board, is what can we do collectively to come up with some ideas to maybe help support and say, how can we inspire others to care more about what's going on in town? And it's the same sentiment that I think could be shared of, if you pop on Facebook, there are complaints about things, but maybe not solutions. So one of the things that I would love to have a call to action for, and whoever has any good ideas towards it, how can we inspire each other, but also our town, to take a vested interest in our future? Because that's ultimately who the kids are in town. It's a representation of your town. It's not just, hey, how much did my taxes go up? It's also, are we proud? And speaking to that, the student representation is fantastic. I said to you the other day, I think it was one of the best things since being on the board. I love seeing the kids here and able to do their presentations. It's good. It should be why we're doing this. So, my call to action is just, what can we do to do things in a different way? Maybe some out of the box ideas to inspire people to come out before it's budget season to say, hey, here are our concerns. Here's what's coming down the pipeline with budget season in mind. I mean, we're in it right now, but also thinking forward and not just here in this moment, because it always feels like a pressure cooker. That's like the reality of it. It's like a pressure cooker. Oh, are we gonna pass a budget? Are we gonna, right? And if we can inspire the community to say, hey, what are we doing to advance our education, to what do we need? How can we be of support in showing up to meetings from time to time? I know they're long at times, but to show that support and see what we can do. So that's all, and I'm gonna do my best to think of some out-of-the-box ideas to show support to doing such a thing, so. Sorry, not to be long-winded.
No, of course, no, everybody has a voice. Julie, I'd really like to thank you for the detail, the level of detail, and the granular level that you brought this board to in terms of itemizing each of the items of things of need. I don't think I've seen that kind of level of detail before in any board presentation in my tenure on the board. I'd really like to thank you for that effort and that energy. Any other comments on,
Share that with Nancy. She's
and Nancy?
Thank you,
by my
Nancy.
Thank
side
you,
through the
Nancy.
whole
Thank you,
thing.
Nancy.
She's
Are there any other questions about item 4, review, question, answers, deliberation? Okay. Item B, discussion and possible motion to develop a collaborative budget.
Sure.
Shane?
So, I wanted to make a motion, and there can be discussion afterwards, but I wanted to make a motion. Our previous meeting, I had made a motion. I think we got a little lost in the verbiage and the actual communication of what that was. So I wrote it out, so it's a little bit more concise. So I moved that the Winchester Board of Education request the Gilbert School Superintendent Greg Shagru and necessary budget staff to collaborate with Winchester Public School Superintendent Julie Luby and Business Manager Nancy O'Day Wyrick, right?
Wyrick, yeah.
Sorry. To develop a fiscally responsible, student-focused K through 12 budget. This collaboration aims to optimize resources to enhance student learning, eliminate budget redundancies and inefficiencies, develop a long-term financial plan supporting all students, and promote transparency and cooperation. We request a joint progress report within 3 business days and a formal budget response within 7 business days. So that would be the motion at hand, so if there's any discussion, but that would be the motion at hand. That's what I wanted.
That needs to be seconded.
Yep.
Jonathan?
Should
All
I
right.
take a picture of that motion so
Sure.
that I'll be able to give it to Lenise?
Yep.
And
Any
Lenise, I'll just hand it. Got it. Just hand it to her. She can go.
discussion? I would have to say that a joint progress report in 3 days is gonna be tough for Julie and the persons and the party members that you've called to action to
Sure.
get together. And then 7 days beyond that, given that each is trying to operate and maintain their daily schedules. I don't think that's feasible. The second thing is that Gilbert voted on its budget last night.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure, you can't undo their board business unless they convene and have a special meeting. So part of your motion is asking for that, it seems like part of your motion is asking for that sort of action, which is commanding another board to get together.
No commandment, it was a request. That's not a command, so it was a request, because we can't command
Right.
Greg or any, we're
And-
a separate board. it was
So
a
your
request.
joint progress report too can be, we couldn't meet.
That's just to our, right, that's to, and it is a, you know, time is of the essence right now, so we have deadlines and whatnot, and I understand that's a big request. But it is a request and it is a motion, so, and it's been seconded. So we can,
The request, or the progress report is just to have an update
a
on
unified
what-
budget of K through 12, right, as I stated.
the
So
progress-
it's, yeah, and the progress
The
report is
progress
on
report
that.
is just to have where you're,
An update
where
on
you're
it,
at
and
kind
then
of
at 7,
is
and
met.
it's business days, so it's not until next Wednesday.
Business days, you're
Yeah.
saying.
In
yeah.
what form, like an email? Or do you want us to come together?
probably
We-
an email.
Yeah, email would suffice.
I have a clarifying question, if I could.
Sure.
Well, one point would be requesting a joint progress report. I might suggest that joint oversteps our reach. They could say no, thank you.
They could
So,
deny that.
I mean,
too.
I can give you a progress report,
Yeah,
I
of
guarantee
course,
that.
Of course.
Or an update on
Yeah.
the success of it, but I don't know that joint is,
Again, at a
Motionable.
request, joint just being what are the findings of that, right? So I understand what you're saying.
and do you, when you say you want a formal budget response in 7 days, are you suggesting that in
As
7
a K
days you
through
want
12,
a
yeah.
new full budget.
K through 12 as opposed to a line item on our budget, right? For, just because, and I understand that would be a little bit of work, but, or some work, I understand. I can see the facial expression, but, yeah. So we can, again, this is just a motion, and we can vote on it, and then kind of go from there, and that would just require the ability to work with Greg, and I'm assuming that would be Diane, but whoever they choose to be at Gilbert, right?
So
So,
are you,
but-
I just want to make sure that we're not setting up Julie for failure here,
Sure.
because she's been working hard on a budget,
I
pulling it together
very
for all
much
of us, and in
understand,
3
yeah.
days' time, are you asking her
It's
to
a
go
progress
through
report, it's not-
this?
What's that?
Not 3 days' time.
Well,
He's
3
asking-
business days of
he's
progress
asking
report.
just of where they're at with it.
And
To
7
see if there's
business days. So
movement.
Joint
that's
progress
actually
report.
not,
I think
that's
that's-
actually would be 2 weeks from now. If you really look at the business days, so tomorrow's Friday, right? And so that's 1, and then 5 is next week, and then we have 1 the following week. So it'd be Monday of the following week.
So,
Let me offer just as some
Sure.
information. I've sort of lost track of with whom I've shared what, but I did meet with Greg. Our last meeting was, could it have been on a Thursday?
For sure.
Or a Wednesday, whenever we met last, and that motion was made, because I'm a good doobie and I do as
Yeah.
I'm told, I reached out to Greg immediately, and we did meet that Friday.
Yep.
And have a conversation around efficiencies. So we did begin exploring.
Sure.
So to the extent that I can tell you, I've met with him, and there were a few things he couldn't answer. He said, ask Diane, so Nancy has reached out to Diane and gotten
Perfect.
some information about things. I can certainly prepare a progress report about that. I can
Yep.
reach out to him again. I should say the response I got was very much, in the absence of a contract, there's nothing to discuss.
Fair. So, again, there was no formal request from the Winchester Board of Education. We just asked you to reach out. So now we're making a formal request on behalf of the Board of Education. That's what the motion would be for. So it's not just, I understand you're presenting to him, but now we're making a formal request to Gilbert, right? And to specifically Greg and whoever he decides will sit in with that.
So perhaps if that motion passes and we're going in that direction, I might suggest that on behalf of our board then,
Yep.
maybe Nora's board chair or somebody should probably make that overture to their board,
Sure.
which
I-
doesn't necessarily compel them to
Right.
anything, but
They
at
have-
least
they have
if
the-
it's a board-to-board request,
They have
it
the,
should.
they have
Yep.
the option, right? That's what a request is. They can
Yep.
deny the request, but, and since I'm making this motion, I wouldn't mind following up, because I was on the board for a time, and that is Holly, so I wouldn't have, any issue following up with that or formally requesting it and sending it forward myself.
So move for a vote?
Yes.
well, just hold on, there might be further discussion. Yeah,
Is your intent for the school year starting 7/1 that you want a combined budget?
I would like to see if
What
we-
it would look like.
what it would look like, right? So it was expressed to me that it would be possible. I understand that it's maybe difficult, but it is possible to do that. And so again, I'm not making this request without having some prior knowledge, having been on the Gilbert board. That is a possibility, so.
I think, too, important to note is that, assuming all goes well and
Sure.
we meet and we have efficiencies and we figure out how to combine, realistically, it would not be this. It would be like a cover sheet of this, or like just by object codes or something more basic, but it also would be in concept,
Sure.
because at the end of the day, we are definitely two fiscal
Yeah.
separate entities, and so it would be more.
Understood, yeah, understood.
I don't want to say fiction, but it wouldn't be a budget as much as looking at it differently, if that makes sense.
It's a playbook.
I trust that both of you would, if they accept the request, that you can come to an agreement and an understanding of what you can develop in that, right? So K through 12 budget as one unified budget, as one, you can both come to that understanding. Because again, having been on the board of Gilbert, understand that this is a possibility for them to do that. So this won't, I don't think this will come as a complete shock to them, so.
Okay.
So,
Any other discussion?
Well, I hope that this could work out. I didn't really like hearing how they wouldn't even spare us their extra nurse if we needed it for a day. So I'm kind of a little pessimistic that if we get our line items right together and we see, oh, look, we got 2 of these. You guys want to split it? I don't know that they're going to, but I'm hopeful that.
yeah.
Well,
that
if we can get rid of this,
If we see on a line item budget, 2 of the same things on the same sheet, we can all come together as 2 boards and say, okay, let's go for one. Maybe that can come of this. So that's great.
So
I like it, yeah.
But they already voted on their budget, so you're talking about
They
for
can have a
next year.
special thing, like you said.
Well,
Could, right?
I don't know if they can, but
Let's
that's
make the
up to their
request.
board, I mean.
Let's make the
Right.
request.
And the other thing is, just remember, we have a deadline too, that
Right.
this is due to the town.
That's all good.
Well,
Thank you.
this isn't due to the town, but the budget is, so.
Board, our full budget,
So we
which
could
includes
still
Gilbert.
vote on the budget before
Yeah.
this,
Oh, absolutely.
right? Yeah, we have to, because we shouldn't wait like 7. I'd like to vote on the
So-
budget on Monday, if at all possible.
I'd like to
go in
make a
and vote
motion
on that
to
stuff.
actually vote on this, so that we can move this motion forward.
Is there further discussion?
I'd like an example of like how you want it laid out. I guess I need like particulars. So like say, let's use the nurses for example, right?
Sure.
Well, wait, can I
Hi.
just interrupt you
Yeah.
for a minute? I think the major hurdle is to send this over to Gilbert, have them say, sure, and then let Julie and Greg talk about how the best way is to do this and present it.
Okay.
Yep. So,
As I hear that, it makes me wonder, are you thinking of this because as we're going forward to the point where, and I know there's, and again, I only know this from sort of hearing the stories, but after we give our budget to the town, and then there's that first public hearing at Pearson School where historically, at one point, the 2 different superintendents would each do a presentation, and then sometime a while back, Mel started doing it and Greg just accompanied her. So are you thinking about this more as a tool of that, so that by the time we are sharing and talking about this, it is not that Gilbert is a line in our budget, but that it's a more unified?
So, when we had budget, if we're going back to that, when we had budget presentations, they each actually made their own presentation, I believe, to that aspect, right? All I'm looking for is, when you were in a district before, it was K through 12, correct? So, our budget does not look the same, right? Because we have a line item for Gilbert. I want to see one unified budget that looks like a K through 12 budget. And what would that look like? And is there any discussion, or how can we make it better, right? Like, how can we make our current structure better? And what can we do to make that happen? And I trust that, again, with the idea that Gilbert would accept this request, that yourself and Nancy and Greg and Diane, or any others that want to be involved, can kind of work towards that, right?
If they just respond immediately and say,
Sure.
great, then I sort of see a path.
Yep.
One thing that strikes me is you say that you're making a motion to make that overture. Will they need a meeting to accept or deny that overture?
Sure.
Because having just met last night, it's probably a month till they meet again? I don't know their schedule well, I'm sorry.
I don't know that for certain, but I do know, I would imagine that Greg could just accept to meet with that and wouldn't need the board's approval to do so. So, I'd like to, yeah, so if we could
Just
just
know
vote
what
on
you're
it.
asking them to do, because
Sure.
our budget is a
Understood.
budget based on building,
Yep, understood,
and their budget is based by object
understood.
Program.
or program.
We're object,
So-
they're program.
We're object, their program.
So, okay.
All right,
Alright.
so, can we vote on that?
You wanna read it again, or are we good?
Are we good on the motion? Do you have it in your hand?
I
All
have
right.
it for you, Louise.
Okay. All right, can you quickly summarize then, just the last bit?
Just read
I
it
mean, I
again.
can just hand it to
Just-
her, or I can.
Just
Read
make
it
sure
again.
everybody knows.
So, I move that the Winchester Board of Education request the Gilbert School Superintendent, Greg Shagru, and necessary budget staff to collaborate with Winchester Public Schools Superintendent Julie Luby and Business Manager Nancy to develop a fiscally responsible, student-focused K-12 budget. The collaboration aims to optimize resources to enhance student learning, eliminate budget redundancies and inefficiencies, develop a long-term financial plan supporting all students, promote transparency and cooperation. We request a joint progress report within 3 business days and a formal budget response within 7 business days.
Okay. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed? 1, 2, 3. That's 8. Okay. All right, motion passes. Do we have a motion to adjourn at 8:53? Jonathan? And we're meeting everybody at 5 o'clock
On Monday.
Okay, do I have a second to adjourn?
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, Sandra, all in favor of adjournment? 8-0. Okay. Yeah. 5 PM. Okay. Thank you, Nancy.
Last time the picture was off, but the mics were still on.